मानसिक शक्ति के इस कार्यक्रम में आप सभी का स्वागत। मेरी आवाज आ रही है आपको? कौशिक, कैन यू हियर मी? यू वेलकम।
यस सर।
ओके। तो मैं देख सकता हूँ करीब 8-9 लोग हमसे जुड़ चुके हैं और मैं उम्मीद करता हूँ कि और बहुत से लोग जुड़ेंगे। अ, मैं समझता हूँ कि सभी को इस कार्यक्रम के बारे में पूरी जानकारी होगी, मगर फिर भी मैं ये बताना चाहूँगा कि छात्रों की मनोवैज्ञानिक मानसिक दबाव, तनाव और मानसिक समस्याओं की की संख्या को देखते हुए और जो आत्महत्या की समस्या चल रही है, उस पर विचार करते-करते हम लोगों ने जो भारतवर्ष में काम करते हैं, हमारे मित्र और कई लोग हमसे जुड़े हुए हैं, कनाडा के, इंग्लैंड के, हमारी मदद कर रहे हैं इस प्रयोग को आगे ले जाने में। तो हमने ये प्रयास शुरू किया है कि जन जागरण के साथ-साथ ट्रेनिंग और एजुकेशन की भी बात की जाए। हमारा विश्वास है कि लोग तब तक समस्या को पहचान नहीं पाएँगे जब तक उन्हें इसके बारे में पूरी जानकारी नहीं होगी। इसलिए मानसिक स्वास्थ्य के बारे में पूरी जानकारी देना, पूरे तथ्य मालूम होना, सभी अध्यापकों को और माता-पिता, परिवार के लोगों को ये मालूम होना कि बच्चे या छात्र किस तरह के तनाव से गुजरते हैं, उन पर क्या बीतती है, उसके क्या लक्षण होते हैं, हर लक्षण को कैसे पहचाना जाता है और पहचानने के बाद वे कौन से कार्यक्रम हैं, वो क्या-क्या तरीके हैं जो किए जाने चाहिए जिससे उनके मन का स्वास्थ्य बना रहे और कोई ऐसी दुर्घटना ना हो, वे अपने जीवन में सुचारू रूप से काम कर सकें। बस इतना ही हमारा उद्देश्य है और इसमें हमने 4 तरह के कार्यक्रम रखे हैं। पहला है ये संवाद का और ट्रेनिंग का, दूसरा है बहुत सारी पुस्तकें जो पब्लिश करने का, ये जो सेमिनार हम कर रहे हैं, इसकी भी हैंडबुक छापी जाएगी, जो करीब 1 महीने में इंग्लिश और हिंदी दोनों में आपको अमेज़न पे मिलेगी। अभी जो हम चर्चा कर रहे हैं, इसके लिए हैंडल लाइफ विद केयर करके एक किताब अमेज़न पे अवेलेबल है, जो आप ले सकते हैं। उसमें स्टूडेंट सुसाइड प्रिवेंशन के बारे में सारी जानकारी दी गई है। इसी के साथ-साथ हमारा प्रयास है, हम कई यूनिवर्सिटीज़ से बात कर रहे हैं कि ये जो छात्रों के मानसिक स्वास्थ्य की समस्या है, ये सिर्फ़ अस्पतालों की नहीं है। ये वहाँ से निकल के विश्वविद्यालय के प्रांगण में आनी चाहिए। नए-नए विषय हैं, नए-नए कोर्स, ट्रेनिंग प्रोग्राम ये शुरू होने चाहिए। लोगों में इस बात की जानकारी बढ़ाई जानी चाहिए। हम सारे विश्वविद्यालय के वाइस चांसलर से प्रार्थना करते हैं कि वे इस विषय में नए कोर्स शुरू करें। हमने कई विश्वविद्यालयों में इसके प्रपोजल दिए हैं और हमें उम्मीद है कि ये हम उसमें सफल होंगे। तीसरा कार्यक्रम हमारा है कि मानसिक स्वास्थ्य की जो मानसिक तनाव का दबाव है, उसके बारे में लोगों को सही जानकारी वो कैसे जाने अपने आप को, कि समस्या को कैसे पहचाने। आज अभी तक ऐसा होता है कि जब हमें कोई तकलीफ होती है तो हम किसी डॉक्टर के पास जाते हैं और वो जो कहता है हम उसे मानते हैं। हमारी संख्या इतनी है और हमें आजकल नए-नए टेक्नोलॉजी का सहारा और उसकी बेनिफिट्स मिल रही हैं। मुझे उम्मीद है कि मशीन लर्निंग और आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस के द्वारा जो भी इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स और क्वेश्चनरी डेवलपमेंट हम मोबाइल ऐप वगैरह पे काम कर रहे हैं, केजे सोमैया इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ टेक्नोलॉजी इसमें हमारी मदद कर रहा है। हम उनके बहुत ही शुक्रगुजार हैं और मैं उम्मीद करता हूं कि लगभग 6 महीने, 8 महीने के भीतर हम ऐसा कुछ प्राप्त कर सकेंगे जो ऑथेंटिक होगा और हम ये कह सकेंगे कि कोई भी छात्र ये मालूम कर सकता है कि उसकी मानसिक समस्या क्या है और उसे उस समस्या को हल करने के लिए क्या करना चाहिए। ये कुछ इनिशिएटिव हैं जो अभी चल रहे हैं। हमें आप सभी के सुझाव की आवश्यकता है। आप इस समस्या के बारे में क्या सोचते हैं, ये भी मुझे जानना है। हमारा उद्देश्य सिर्फ एक तरफ से बातें करना नहीं है। हम समझते हैं और जानते हैं कि जो लोग परिवारों में हैं, विद्यालयों में हैं, अध्यापक हैं, वे हमसे ज़्यादा जानते हैं कि छात्रों की समस्याएँ क्या हैं, मगर शायद उनकी बातें हम तक पहुँचती नहीं हैं। हम आपको सुनना चाहते हैं। तो आज के कार्यक्रम में 2 लेक्चर रखे गए हैं। एक है डॉक्टर कौशिक देव सिन्हा का, जो ऑल इंडिया इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ मेडिकल साइंसेज न्यू दिल्ली में एडिशनल प्रोफेसर ऑफ साइकियाट्री हैं। बहुत ही वेरी इंटेलिजेंट एंड ब्राइट एंड अपकमिंग young researcher and faculty in the country, and we are proud of him. He has an excellent and track record of teaching in mental health education, particularly interested in artificial intelligence and machine learning. He runs the program for student well-being, and he is going to share the experience of wellness which has been gathered in All India Institute for students who have been facing stressful life situation. The second lecture would be by Dr. Shubhangi Parkar, former academic dean of the KEM Hospital, Mumbai. And after her lecture, we will have half an hour for panel discussion, and I will moderate that. Your questions are very welcome. Please enjoy the lecture. May I now invite Dr. Kaushik? Can you take over and deliver your lecture, please?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. But is the language of communication English or it's okay
नहीं,
to be?
आप हिंदी में बात करें और इंग्लिश में करें, सब हिंदी में ज्यादा अप्रिशिएबल है।
हाँ जी सर, ठीक है
जी।
I am comfortable in both, and thank you very much, sir, for this, for introducing or giving me the opportunity to be in this platform, and also for this wonderful endeavor, which talks about Mnasik Shakri, which tries to increase the mental strength. At AIMS, we have been, so can I share my screen?
Yes, please. I will make you a host. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that now you can do that.
Okay, sir.
Yes.
So, yeah. So I'll go to.
Yeah, we can see that. Perfect.
Yes, right. So, right. Although this is an online presentation and such kind of discussions generally happen better, far better if it is face to face, but nevertheless, every opportunity we have been taught that it should be taken so that we can all come to a common platform where we can, you know, create a consensus of how to manage the problems that we are all facing. सारी टीचर्स के पास हम जब जाते हैं और बहुत सारे स्कूलों में हम जब ऐसे सेल्फ हेल्प प्रोग्राम करते हैं, तब हमें जो समझ में आता है कि हर कोई चाहते हैं, हर कोई टीचर जो हो वो चाहते हैं किसी ना किसी तरीके से स्टूडेंट की मदद करना, बट practically situation में people feel very helpless and very powerless because often they lack the skill of helping others or helping particularly a student who has suicidal ideation, because the student might not come to the teacher and say. Often things are learned or the patterns are found out in retrospect. So if you look into the national program or even to the media, there would always be, you know, some graphics and some statistics showing that one death is happening every 40 seconds. Student deaths are one of the highest. And even if you look into the global standard, the global cause of death across the world, till the age of around 30 to 35 years, it is mostly seen that death happens either by unintentional injury, that is road traffic accident, or by intentional injury and harm, which is by suicide. Only after the age of around 35 years, gradually malignant neoplasms and others start picking up. And by the age of around 40, 45 years and others, then malignancy, heart disease and others come. So essentially, up to the age of 35 years, majority of the death in all our young people, including our students and others, is highly preventable. Now, yes, it is preventable. The problem is how. And often it's asked कि sir हमारे problems अलग है या अरे the situations are different, student doesn't come and tell us, या आप तो डॉक्टर है, आपके पास जब मरीज आते हैं वो तो बोल देंगे कि नहीं आई एम फीलिंग डिप्रेस्ड, और आप साइकियाट्रिस्ट है, पीपल विल टेल दैट आई एम फीलिंग डिप्रेस्ड, आई एम फीलिंग सुसाइडल. हमारे पास बच्चे बोलते नहीं है, या हम करें क्या समझ में नहीं आते हैं. So often we have to remember them that at AIMS also, apart from being doctors, we are also teachers. And we have very young students who have joined the first time they have gone out of home and into their hostels and into their colleges. And we are their mentors and we are their teachers, and we are managing the beginning of their academic life. And they are under tremendous stressor. So the context is that I'm speaking here not only as a part of being a clinician or being a doctor. I'm speaking more as a teacher and a mentor for undergraduate and postgraduate students. So since when I myself was an undergraduate student in 2005-6, and then when I did my postgraduateship, since then we have been tracking that in AIMS, IIT, everywhere, student suicides are very high. And rather than speaking about anybody else, if you look into what happens at AIMS, it's one of the premier most institute where a lot of support systems are there. Department of Psychiatry is there, medicine is there, student bodies are there. Even there, almost every year, we have been tracking that there is a suicide that's happening in us. So it's not an ethic perspective. ऐसा नहीं है कि हम बोल रहे हैं कि नहीं suicide होते हैं. हमने खुद देखे हैं, and we have seen teachers how they break down when one of their students commits suicide. We have seen the pain that they feel when they say कि काश मुझे पहले पता होता, मुझे कहीं से पता होता कि ऐसे होता है. So we understand the pain that and the helplessness that teachers go through. So when it started happening on a regular basis, I had just joined as an assistant professor after completing my MD from here. It was at that time that under Professor Chadda, who is the current HOD, and Professor Sharan, who would be the upcoming next HOD, Pratap Sharan, we started developing a program of student wellness at AIMS. And the reason is that, is there a way in which we can devise a way in which even in our own institute, we can decrease the suicide attempts and the completed suicide, which are happening. So essentially, again, what I'm trying to reiterate is that this is more about a journey as a junior faculty and as a senior resident, and then gradually becoming more and more senior faculty into the program, where the purpose is not only a national thing, but it is to synthesize the data from the national or the international arena, and then try to devise a program that can work in my institute, that can help my student. So the problem that we often feel, and I think it's a very valid question for everybody, is that if I am to start something to help my students manage their own stress and prevent suicide, where should I begin from? Actually, what to do as the very first step. So I was looking into the program. Over the last 3-4 days, we have had a lot of sessions about developing the skills and the various strategies which are used. So, and all of those programs that they say is something like, there are certain basic things that all school and all systems can do to prevent suicides from happening, because a suicide doesn't happen in the vacuum. A suicide happens because there is already a series of stressors, what we call, which are creating a turmoil in the person. There is already a series of events which are happening in the person's life. And then gradually, this stress, initially any individual is capable of managing this stress. So when we call that, this is a eustress. After some time, as the number of stress causing factors are increasing, it becomes a distress in which the person is not capable of managing it. And ultimately, there is a point in which there is a breakdown that happens to the person. It can be something as simple as a fight with the parent. So the student goes to school, the student is staying in a hostel, there is a problem with the warden, there is a problem with the friends, and the student is managing everything. In the night, there is a call and there is a fight with the mom, and the student feels, now I cannot manage it. So the typical Hindi saying that ultimately it's the last straw that breaks the camel's back. So it can be anything that finally causes the action. But if there is a way of managing the stresses which are happening, so either by decreasing the factors that are causing the stress, or by improving the coping of the student to manage the stress. So these things you will see again and again. So managing stress, improving coping, lifestyle modification, problem solving, burnout prevention, and of course, if there is a psychiatric problem or if there is even a psychological problem, then initially starting management of that problem on an early basis. Because a treatment for depression is actually might be a primary prevention or a secondary prevention for depression, but a treatment for depression then becomes a primordial or a primary prevention for suicide, because depression itself is a risk factor for suicide. So then what were asked of us, how do I do this program? One is to do, a one-time program of calling somebody and doing kind of uh, an information and educational program of 1 day or 2 day, which we called the awareness program on all this, how to manage stress, where you accept that stress happens, and the stress is happening in teachers, the stress is also happening in students. But not only that, what we found is that some systemic changes can be done in any school and college system. It has been shown that if there are groups, so I'll give the example of what happened during COVID. Most of the medical students who come to us, they have a very stressful life, in that from morning till evening they spend in the hospital. And then in the evening, they go back to their hostel, and the next day again in the morning, they're back in the hospital. So when COVID happened, all the other social avenues of interaction and release of stress and coping mechanisms, they started vanishing, because they were doing 34 hours, 36 hours, 48 hours of shift. Then they were going back to the hospital, and then again they were coming. And they had no way to communicate their friends and to crib about the problems and the stresses that they were going through, which normally happens in a group. So we started doing some groups, hobby groups. Like there was a chess group, there was a cooking group, photography group. So these groups then started bringing the students together. So they would have 36 hours of duty, and then they will come back and join a group. The idea is that it has been shown by evidence that even if there is a non-informal group, hobby groups like drawing, painting, photography, or even quiz or others there, these groups create an alternate network where students can communicate and crib about their stress. So the faculty member who is in charge, or the teacher who is in charge of these groups, rather than only speaking about the group's activity and the interest, if they introduce ideas of stress and how to manage stress, because there is a shared bond and because there is not the authoritative structure of a classroom, students often respond better and divulge more of their problems in such groups. So that's one way of doing. The other way, which we have found very helpful, is that we started taking skill building courses to all of the faculty members, or all faculty and teachers at AIMS, even the faculty specifically who are in the first semester, when the student comes in, so the anatomy, physiology, and others. So what we found out was that while talking to the professors and even the assistant professors, or even the senior residents, like the junior faculty, so that will be equivalent to any school, it will be equivalent to any lecturer or any teacher, that by that matter. Although we are aware about that suicide is a risk, we all lack the capacity to scientifically assess the risk of suicide. Either we become very anxious and overestimate the risk, and we then inform the family members, or immediately inform the hospital or put the child in the hospital, or we tend to cover it up by saying that nah, it doesn't seem like, it says a lot, but it doesn't seem like that this particular student is going to commit a suicide. So the skill of scientific assessment of risk of suicide we found to be very helpful to others. And after the program, many of the faculty or the teachers came back and told us that that is a skill that they really appreciated, and they would want to learn more, because skill, A single class or a single lecture can give you knowledge, but skill comes from repeated practice of that knowledge that brings in mastery about the particular knowledge that has been taught to you. Finally, there was a huge confusion and huge conflict about, suppose I find that one of my student is suicidal. What am I supposed to do then? So just knowing and assessing the risk is not enough. Giving everybody a guideline of how to manage when once suicidality is discovered. So there are questions like, is it my responsibility to take the child to the hospital? No. If I tell the parents that, okay, look, your son or your daughter is suicidal, and then the child goes home, I have spent so many nights without sleep because I don't know if the parents have taken me seriously or not. Should I even tell that to the parents that the child is suicidal if the stressor is actually at home? So essentially, a lot of teachers have this uh, difficulty in trying to decide what is the optimum response. So these are the three major primary areas in which we feel it's very difficult to institute a program for management of suicide in a teacher-student scenario. And that comes not only from talking to teachers of primary, secondary, and colleges, but we have been taking classes in DPS, Delhi Public School, and also in IIT in that way. But the problem, it seems to be universal. Wherever a student wellness program starts, the complaint that comes, oh, the students don't come, or the students come and tell, but what are you going to do with it? All we can say is that go and see a doctor. Then why do we need a program to go and see a doctor? We can simply say that just like that. There is no need for a program. So those kind of issues, complaints still start coming to us whenever we talk about this. So in this, again, brief discussion or brief trying to share the experience and the problems that we have faced while we have been doing this, I'll just harp on a few very salient things that I feel every teacher should know, and because it can be life-saving, and because it can create the idea, or it can be the nidus of that spark that can help design a program in whichever situation or a system a teacher is, be it a primary school, be it a secondary school. All that is required is 2 or 3 interested people to start the services, which then gradually snowballs over here. It doesn't happen in a vacuum, it starts. So there are many and scales and ways and programs to identify the suicide risk. We have gradually narrowed down to a scale called the Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale. And the reason for that is gradually CSSRS has been accepted by WHO, by the American Psychological Association, by many of the international organizations as the single scale to go to. But the reason why we take an example of the CSSRS are two. One is that a lot of resources available in the internet. There are even YouTube videos of how to apply the CSSRS and how to ask those questions. And second, CSSRS has a very step-ladder pattern. It has a very step-ladder pattern of trying to assess the idea about suicide, which we feel when we teach others about the skill of assessing suicide risk, they understand it very quickly and inherently. So what CSSRS says that although there are some cases where suicide might be, impulsive, where there has been a fight and the person does not have any previous ideas and the person just goes and does something. But in majority of the cases, the idea of self-harm and suicide, it gradually grows. And it is possible by talking to any person quickly and in a short time to assess at what level of seriousness this idea is there in their head or in their mind. So the very first thing, which is in pale yellow or in yellow, it says that it starts with, do you wish if you are dead, or do you wish that life is not worth living, or did you wish that you went to sleep and did not wake up? So the same questions that we ask is, कभी ऐसा लगता है कि मैं सब छोड़ के चला जाऊं, ट्रेन में बैठ जाऊं और वापस ना आऊं? कभी ऐसा लगता है कि कल सुबह मैं हॉस्पिटल में आऊं ही नहीं या क्लास में जाऊं ही नहीं? So this is what we call as a passive idea about death. The value of life in that person has decreased, but the person is not actively thinking of harming himself or herself. The person is simply thinking, if I was not existing anymore, if I did not exist anymore, what difference would it cause? So from this passive idea, then it goes more into an active idea. Then the question becomes slightly different. कभी कभी क्या ऐसा लगता है कि मैं खुद को ही कुछ करूं ताकि मैं मर जाऊं. So what it does, you'll see that if you follow the step-by-step questioning pattern of CSSRS, it's very easy to initiate the conversation about in and around death, because many of the teachers feel a difficulty in starting the conversation around suicide with any person who is visibly distressed and there is a possibility of suicide in them. So going back to the CSSRS, what it says is, फ्रॉम अ पैसिव की लगता है कि भगवान उठा ले तो क्या फर्क पड़ेगा, मैं मर जाऊंगा तो क्या फर्क पड़ेगा, मेरे मम्मी पापा कुछ दिन रोएंगे फिर वो भी भूल जाएंगे. देन इट गोज टू कभी कभी ऐसा लगता है कि मैं खुद को कुछ कर लूं. सो दैट्स अ एक्टिव सुइसाइडल आइडिएशन व्हिच इज नॉट स्पेसिफिक एंड नॉट विदाउट एनी डेफिनाइट प्लान. आफ्टर दैट इट सडनली चेंजेस कि नहीं, मुझे लगता है कि मैं खुद को कुछ नुकसान कर लूं. और मैंने तो ये भी सोचा है कि उस दिन मैं रेलवे स्टेशन में गया था, जहां जाके मैं वहां पे खड़ा था कि मुझे देख रहा था कब ट्रेन आते क्या आता है, और मेरे मन में कर रहा था कि कूद जाओ. सो यू सी दैट द आइडिया हैज नाउ चेंज्ड फ्रॉम समथिंग वेरी नॉन स्पेसिफिक टू समथिंग वेरी स्पेसिफिक प्लान. Then the next step CSSRS says that there are multiple plans. I will do this or I will do that. Should I jump or should I consume something? And there is a comparison between the plan. Then it becomes, then there is some preemptive attempts. The person goes to the place and sees it, or some aborted attempts. The person goes to the place, but somebody stops. So essentially, then the question becomes, or the person's verbatim becomes, अरे यार या सर कल तो मैं गया था और जाके मैं चुपचाप रेलवे स्टेशन में बैठा भी था आधा घंटा, फिर मेरा मन नहीं किया तो मैं वापस आ गया. So this, and then there is the actual actions which are done before the act. So they are called the last right actions. So these are like writing a goodbye on YouTube or the Facebook or Instagram, or writing a note, or talking to the family members, or talking to the friends. So what one can understand intrinsically is that the thought that starts from मुझे कल सुबह ना भी उठूं तो कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है, and then gradually progresses to the fact that क्या मैं ये कर लूं, क्या मैं वो कर लूं, और कल तो मैं गया भी था. This stream of thought, if you follow it, it immediately shows, it gives you an idea about how serious the suicidal ideation is in the person's mind. So CSSRS, the questions actually go in a manner which is this stepladder pattern, and it teaches you to ask. So in most of the face-to-face programs that we do, we'll call a student and we'll call a teacher, and one of our students will be a dummy student, and then the student will say कि मन अच्छा नहीं लगता है, या लगता है कि मैं स्कूल ही ना जाऊं, या मेरा मन करता है कि स्कूल से मैं घर वापस ही ना जाऊं, कोई ट्रेन में चला जाऊं. And we'll give 15-20 minutes to the teacher to ask about suicide. We'll specifically instruct the teacher कि आप इनसे suicide के बारे में पूछिए. But even in 15-20 minutes, we'll see that the teacher will be asking things. अच्छा बच्चा क्या प्रॉब्लम है बताओ, घर में सब ठीक है ना, अच्छा चलो तुम मेरे पास आके बात करो.
झाड़ू निकाल के सोए थे, पूरा घर साफ करवा के सोई हूं मैं. अगर कोई बोलता घर की झाड़ू निकली ना, हाँ तो घर.
So still, even after 15-20 minutes, people will not be able to ask the direct question कि क्या ऐसा लगता है कि मैं मर जाऊं, या क्या ऐसा लगता है कि मैं कुछ कर लूं जिससे मेरा नुकसान हो जाए. So it's very easy to talk about suicide, but when you are in a one-to-one situation and you don't have the skill to begin this conversation, it's very difficult to ask about life and death, because there are so many, prejudices, or so many things that we have in our mind that, oh, if I ask, this is going to happen, or if the person is saying this is going to happen. So CSSRS helps us in formulating those questions in a manner that will help us assess the risk of suicide. This is something in a single class I think all teachers can be taught about. And then how the response happens, it varies from place to place. We're not going to go to it. But like I said, we don't talk about suicide primarily because if a student comes, and this is with even doctors, even in the emergency, if a student comes and says about suicide or cries, we say that कि अरे ये तो attention के लिए बोल रहा है, कुछ नहीं बोल रहा. So that is an example of.
But very collaborative sanguine.
Just give me a second. Sorry. So what happens is they're just trying to get attention. But ultimately, you realize that no, they're trying to get help in some form. So their way of asking the help may be dramatic, maybe subdued, maybe extrovert, maybe introvert. But at the end of the day, anybody who is actually talking about harming himself or herself, they're trying to get attention. It's a plea for help, and we should provide them. Similar thing is that a person who threatens suicide won't really follow about it. That's not true. 80% of people who have completed their suicides have actually communicated it to somebody. So that somebody has to be a person who is non-judgmental and non-biased. And in that way, rather than parents will scold, teachers are at a very, very favorable and a very important pivotal position, because teachers know what is a normative behavior of children of that age group, because they are seeing a sample size of 40 per every class or 50 plus every class. And because they have to see so many children, all the students know that there is a basic fairness and non-judgmentalness in every teacher. Like the parents have one or two kids and they might be too much invested in them, but teachers come across as much more neutral persons with whom a student can go and have a talk. The problem is when a student comes and talks, we feel that talking about suicide might cause the person to act, which is actually very much false, because it has been shown that it is helpful to person. So there is a WHO guideline about what are things to be said and not to be said, like very similar to when there is a suicide is being reported in the newspaper, what is to be done or not. But in general, it has been shown that their suicidal thoughts go through suicidal ideas, suicide plans, and then pre-attempts. So there is a period of suicidal ambivalence. Should I do it? Should I not do it? Because biologically, every organism wants to live. And only when the stress and the distress become so much. So when we have asked our own students after they have attempted suicide, and when we ask them, कि भाई तूने ऐसे क्यों किया? So say after 2 weeks, 3 weeks of that, the student will say कि सर मैं जब मुड़ के सोचता हूँ तो मुझे लगता है कि वो क्यों बेवकूफी था. बट उस टाइम पे मुझे इतना डिस्ट्रेस हो रहा था, मुझे लग रहा था मैं कुछ भी करूं ताकि इससे मैं निकल जाऊं, मुझसे वो डिस्ट्रेस बर्दाश्त नहीं हो रहा था. So there is an underlying suicidal ideation that goes through all the time. But if there is a secondary outlet of or any other outlet of managing that distress, 99% of the time the student or the person will be able to manage the distress by himself or herself. Only when it's in the late in the night and all the doorways have closed, and then suddenly the distress peaks and the person does not find any other option, uh, you know, to let go of it, then the person takes some drastic steps. So rather than going out and into a door, he goes out of the balcony or something like that. So it's all about, it's giving the person an avenue to talk about suicide, and the students come and talk. A very similar related, our attitudinal problem is that once a person decides to die, nothing can stop them. How much time do I have? I have still another 15 minutes. So, you know, the final or the few others is that we feel that I have talked to this student and now the student has settled down and now it's okay. Now we can go home. So improvement following a suicide attempt, or even improvement following a discussion or a counseling session, it means that the risk is now over. Again, like I said, the underlying stressors keep on happening. So there is always a baseline. And suicide is very difficult to prevent, because that point of break where the person is unable to manage his or her distress can happen at any point of time. So you talk to a person for half an hour, the person settles down, the person smiles and says, sir or ma'am, you have done a wonderful thing for me, I look up to you. And the person goes home, and there is a sexual advance by another family member, and the person cannot say anything, and he realizes all talk is useless, and the person attempts and commits suicide. So we don't know where and how the final stressor would come, which will overwhelm a person's coping strategy. And therefore, the continued hand-holding is something that is very much necessary in majority of the suicide prevention program. So what I simply want to say is that once the risk is assessed, how to go ahead. So I have a friend or I have a student for whom I have assessed the risk. What should I do then? So what we should do comes from a study from, I think, the Lancet, which was done a few years back. And of course, other speakers would have talked about it. So this essentially talks about a method of preventing highly unpredictable suicide in groups. It's called the Project Safety Net. So what it simply says is that uh, one person, one teacher, or one college or school program, or one doctor cannot alone save a person from all the suicidal ideations and impulses which happen. So a safety net is of course like a net which is made of wires or threads, and we all, like me, sir, this Mnasik Shakri program, the teachers, we are all parts of that thread that knot into each other. So when a student falls, the student gets caught in some part of that safety net. And a single safety net will not do. There has to be multiple safety nets because all nets have holes. So the idea is that if a student or somebody is falling through one of the hole, he will be caught in some other safety net of another hole. So it has been shown that these safety nets are very much beneficial for school program, even in preventing doctor suicide. And if you go, this is, I think, the Lancet psychiatry study, the resource suicide prevention strategies. It's a systematic review of anything and everything that has worked over the last 10 years. And it talks about many of the things that we have been trying to implement or trying to give the teachers an idea about what can be started in any situation where there is interaction between teachers and students. So the strategies are often taken. So suppose I'm doing a suicide prevention program, I need to find out not only the skill of how to assess the risk of suicide, but I also need to find out what are the resources which are available to me. And there would always be two types of resources. Now, this slide is done from the student wellness. So it's how we find out our resources, and it is to give the idea to any teacher who is listening, how to find out the resources in their locality. So what kind of system resources do I have in my school or college? So what are the mental health resources do I have? For example, IIT has, after a series of talks, IIT have now, they have enlisted the student counselors. And I think many of the schools here also have student counselors. So I have student counselors. But apart from student counselors, do I have psychiatry resident, junior resident, senior resident, or faculty to whom I can send a student who is at need? So if I transpose it to a school situation, do I know of a faculty who is liked by students because he talks about and the students are comfortable in talking to him? Do I have a friend or colleague in the community or a psychiatrist in the community with whom I can have the school or I can have an interaction and a liaison where I can send a student unofficially or officially to talk for half an hour? Do I have a clinical psychologist in my surrounding which I can take? So what are the on-call numbers? What are the numbers of the security? How many of us know actually the number of the security person in our own school and the hostel where the student is staying? And then what are my non-institute resources? Like what are the private counselors? Who are the list of private counselors with whom I can call them once and have a a hand-holding meeting, or I can have a discussion. I'll call them as resource person in my school for a lecture or for a interaction and a discussion. And during that, let me create a safety net with all the private counselors in my city or all the alumni of my school, if they can help by giving some money into a project. Then there are other non-institute resources, like what is there in the web, what is there in the hospital nearby, what is there in the mobile application. So these kind of resources we have made through one of our projects. A nursing student who is doing her MSc in nursing, she was trying to do a program for first year BSc nursing students who are joining at AIIMS. So we did a resource manual where we have a handbook that is now given to all of the students when they enter within the very first month. So can we have a handbook of various helplines to all students who are joining a college or at least a residential kind of a place, so that we think that the students know them. We think that the students will know whom to go to if there is a tummy ache and whom to go to if there is a psychological distress. But do they actually know? Are there flyers, or is there a way in which we can give them a consolidated document for that? The second, we need to find out what are the various resources that comes with the patient. So of course there is a resource of family because they are the caregiver and the decision maker. But student might have some stressors with which they cannot share with the family: substance use, relationship issues, sexual issues, or even monetary issues which they can't share. So what are the other resources that every person has? So are there any friends or friends network? This becomes even more important when the person gradually grows up, like if it is more of college or 10th and 12th. Like, are there hobby groups? So that's what I was saying. If there is a hobby of, a person might not want to talk to the friends in the class or the classmates, but the person might be willing to talk to a person who is in the computer hobby class or the photography hobby class. So we need to find out the resources that are there in my system and the resources there in the patient or the student system. And a good beginning point of having a suicide prevention safety net program anywhere with one person as the starting would be to just have a introductory class, a booklet, and a method in which somebody can come in times of need. So it will be very rudimentary, but there is nothing called an absolute yes or no, because even with the best of resources, 100% suicide prevention doesn't happen. But even with the minimal of resources, a significant number, more than 80% of suicide prevention can happen. So the hope is always that even with minimal resources, a lot of good things can be done. So the second is, there are a lot of applications, and applications are also being developed by the Mnasik Shakri program, but that's a separate issue. What I'm trying to say is that if there are no resources, one should look into the resources which are there online. The second or the most other problem that we often face is teachers or our lecturers or other doctors coming and telling us, hey, look, my student is crying and he or she is saying that I am worried about going back to the hostel because I feel I might harm myself. So what is my role and what is my obligation and what is my legal role and obligation about this? So one thing that is legally, one has to take the next logical step, but there is nothing that one has to stay with the person or it becomes completely one person's burden. Now, because we have discussed that suicide ideations keeps on fluctuating all throughout the day and it can peak at any other point of time and it continues over day. So the question that we ask is, suppose your student is being suicidal, or suppose your friend for that matter is saying कि किसी को मत बताना, मेरा बिल्कुल मन नहीं लग रहा है, मुझे लग रहा है कि मैं कुछ कर लूं, लेकिन कोई किसी को बोलूंगी तो वो क्या बोलूंगा या बोलूंगी तो वो क्या सोचेंगे, तुम मेरे साथ रह जाओ, you stay with me. So the JR or our doctor, the student and the friend, they stay together. Then the next day the student says, the resident says that, भाई तू एक काम कर, आधा घंटा रुक जा, मैं एक बार जाके ना मेरा ये काम करके आ जाता हूँ, वापस मैं तेरे साथ ही रहूंगा. So he goes to the ward and he talks to somebody, he comes back in half an hour and 1 hour and finds that his friend has attempted suicide. So that gives a very difficult question, is that once somebody has confided in you that he or she is suicidal, what should be your next responsibilities and logical steps? What can you do? So the two golden principles is that one person cannot take on the responsibility of managing a suicidal person again and again and again. That's number one. And the second is, there is no time limit for which the support is to be provided. It's not 2 hours, 6 hours. It's not कि चलो शाम को जाके हम मूवी देख लेते हैं, उसके बाद ठीक हो जाओगे. It's not कि आज रात सो जा, कल सुबह ठीक हो जाएगा. It doesn't happen like that. So informing others and creating a resource network is even more important, because if I am taking responsibility of my student or my friend, I need somebody to relieve me. And one of the technique for that is handoff. So handoff says that it is my moral and ethical responsibility to be with the person till I can hand him over to the next responsible person in the chain. So it might be that, suppose, let me give a scenario which is again from our side. The student is here in a hostel and the student has said that I am feeling very disturbed to a senior. So another student. The other student is not supposed to keep this information with himself or herself, supposed to stay with the student till he talks to one of the seniors or the hostel warden. The moment a hostel warden gets the student, the hostel warden is supposed to take on the responsibility. But again, a hostel warden cannot take the responsibility all throughout. There are other students also. The hostel warden is supposed to inform the person in charge. So in our case, it will be the dean, or currently Professor Pratap Sharan, who is a professor in psychiatry and looks after the student wellness officially. Once the dean and Dr. Pratap Sharan or the psychiatry resident knows, then it's up to us to do the formal assessment and decide whether to call the parents or the autonomy, and the student doesn't want the parents to be informed. So to take that step of whether the parents are to be informed or not. That is because here most of the students are more than 20 years of age or 18 years of age, so they have more on autonomy and privacy. Whereas if it is less than 18 years of age, it can be mandatory to call the parents. And essentially, the parents are to be given very strong instruction to stay 24/7 with the student till a specialist has observed and the next step is taken. So the idea is that, again, we are forming a human chain. Rather than one person bearing the sole responsibility and failing for 5 minutes, it's a sequence of people who take on the responsibility 100% in the next link in the chain, till a mental health professional or somebody sees the person and tries and decides what's the best next course of action, because the final course of action cannot be done by a single person. The final course of action has to be done by somebody who specializes. At the end of the day, it has to be a psychiatrist, psychologist, or a doctor, and a team of person who decides if a person who is actively suicidal requires medical management, inpatient supervision, or outpatient intensive counseling program. So what happens is that it often there is a caregiver burnout because they become overwhelmed. आज देखा, कल देखा, 2 दिन ठीक हुआ, फिर उसके बाद वही बोल रहे हैं, and then there is a lot of expressed emotion. And there is also this trap in which the person who is suicidal says, there is a lot of stigma for suicide. किसी को मत बताना, मेरे टीचर को मत बताना, मेरे पेरेंट्स को मत बताना, तू ही देख. So again, it then becomes very overwhelming for the person who is providing the emotional support. We cannot do that. So it is said that if it is becoming overwhelming, 2-3% should take over, and at least 4-5 hours of off contact should be there for the care providers. And there is also this fear of stigma. So he doesn't want to say. What happens that, अरे मैंने उसके पेरेंट्स को तो बोल दिया, उसके बाद तो वो मेरे से बात ही नहीं कर रहा है या कर रही है. So life is so precious that telling the parents or telling the teacher or telling and taking to a doctor might break the friendship for the time being. But life is so precious. Most of the students, when they understand, when they have come back, they say that we are thankful that at that point of time you did not listen to us and you took me to the psychiatry doctor, you took me to the psychiatrist, or you took me to the ward. So what I'm simply trying to say is that the admission in a psychiatry ward or admission in a medicine ward might save a student's life. And the temporary frustrations that happen, and for us also it happens that the patients or the students' parents who are far off, they without understanding initially will just blame. नहीं मेरे बच्चे को ऐसा कुछ नहीं है, आपने क्या बोला, कैसे आपने इसको एडमिट करा दिया, किसने आपको करने के लिए बोला था. But when they come back and then they listen and then they go through and then they say कि नहीं sir, आपने तो बचा लिया उसको. And on the other hand also, we have unfortunately been in the other end of things कि we have admitted a person and the parents have come and said कि मेरे बच्चे को ऐसे ही कुछ नहीं है, एम्स ही सब stress देता है. Even in a premier institute with so many safeguard like aims, they have taken the child back to their hometown कि हम तो इसको देख लेंगे, हम ठीक कर लेंगे. And within a month or so in their hometown, the child has attempted and completed suicide. So there is so much of important rage and important sadness in the teachers when they are unable to, tell the parents that, look, this is a serious thing. But at the same time, again, like I said, suicide is not an all and non phenomena. No matter what you do, even simple things can save a lot of life, and there would be some difficulties in the road. So the idea is that any safety net that you do will have holes, but let us not fall in the hole. So there are other things like psychological fast aid. I think I'll go back. So teachers often ask us, what should we do if a student is talking to us about their suicidal things? So one psychological principle of, we included these slides in the training because is that there is something in psychotherapy which is called supportive psychotherapy, which is ideally it's a dynamic or analytical psychotherapy, but dynamic psychotherapy. But the basic principle, it says that just listen and just explain, reassure, normalize that everybody goes through these kind of feeling. Don't confront the person, but reframe the problem that he is going through. Give the student encouragement or praise. Give him hope that. So for often our students that we say that, look, the first 6 months of any career is very difficult, but your whole career is not going to be as difficult as this. When you become a doctor, you will have a lot more good things to happen. So you have just got to tide over these temporary things. Give them metaphor, because all humans love story. And be mindful about the language that we're using. Like, what were you thinking? So rather than saying that, say something, okay. So supportive psychotherapy is a full-fledged psychotherapeutic technique, but we feel that even there is a single skill building class that is necessary. A supportive psychotherapy skill building of teachers will help them immensely, because most of us don't listen. Most of us are more advisorial, whereas suicidal person requires somebody to listen to them and their plight that they're going through. So at the end of the day, there are certain features like holding the client and dealing with frustration, but ultimately, I'll come back to what I started with. I don't feel this half an hour or 40-minute session will give you the skill to prevent suicide in your own place. I just want this to be the kindling that can help you to in the path of knowledge, where you develop the skills and ultimately the mastery of how to create a program in your school that can help prevent suicide in the long term. So all good things must also come to an end. Yes, and all bad things must also come to an end. The single biggest communication problem is the illusion that has taken place, but still I will hope against hope that I have been able to contaminate with your mind with some ideas that can help in the long term in designing such a program. Thank you all. I will stop there and I'll hand it back to sir. Yes, sir, you're muted. Dr. Amresh.
Yes, yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Kaushik. You explained a number of important factors which we need to discuss, and shared your experience, your program. A number of our friends have recently joined, I can see, and what we have been talking last 3-4 days, let me sum up quickly so that everybody can recap what exactly we mean. And so the fact of the matter is that our students are under stress. There is no denying about it. Not only they feel stressed, they are telling you that they are under stress. They're writing notes, keeping in the writing it in the email, on social media, in letters. Many people write. They are communicating. They are frankly telling you. And what are we doing? Our silence, our inactivity, our inability to develop a methodology to listen to them and respond to their problems, whether it is from institutional level or governmental level or family level or from peers, whatever, is further increasing their problem. And the consequences that you have 13,000 students killing themselves in a year in India, about 10 times underreported suicide, about 20 times are people who have attempted, they go to the hospital, take treatment and come back. They have to be reintegrated in the system of education. And you may imagine कि वो शख्स जिसने सुसाइड अटेम्प्ट किया है, उसे बचाया गया, वो वापस स्कूल में आया है जहां समस्या शुरू हुई थी, और वहां कोई ऐसा इंतजाम नहीं है कि उसके लिए कोई चेष्टा करे, कोई समझे, कोई उसके कोर्स के बारे में अलग से बात करे। और ये नहीं भूलना चाहिए कि ये जो लोग सुसाइड का अटेम्प्ट करते हैं और उन्हें बचाया जाता है, वो सारे के सारे दूसरे अटेम्प्ट के लिए हाई रिस्क है। जैसा कि हम सभी जानते हैं, और आप इतने सालों की रिसर्च देखें तो अगर आने वाले 10 साल देखिए तो 100 लोग जिन्होंने सुसाइड अटेम्प्ट किया है 10 साल में, कम से कम 30 से 50% लोग फिर से अटेम्प्ट करते हैं, और इनमें से 5 से 10% लोग 10 साल के अंतराल में अपनी जान ले लेते हैं। मैं ये बता रहा हूं इसलिए कि हमारे पास वो लोग अवेलेबल हैं जो हाई रिस्क हैं। हम जानते हैं कि वो कौन लोग हैं जिन्हें जीवन में खतरा हो सकता है किसी भी तनाव के समय या किसी भी सोशल या साइकोलॉजिकल चेंज के समय। मगर हमने उसका कोई इंतजाम नहीं किया। ये ऐसा है कि मानसिक स्वास्थ्य की समस्याओं के बारे में हम ये मान के चलते हैं कि ये तकलीफें किसी और को होंगी, ये बरसात का वो पानी है जो मेरे घर में नहीं आएगा। हम इतने आश्वस्त हैं, इसीलिए हम इस पे विश्वास नहीं करते और हमें ये आदत छोड़नी चाहिए। हमें तथ्यों को सामने देखना चाहिए। हमें अपने बच्चों को स्कूल में भेजने के पहले इस बात का पूरा अंदाजा लेना चाहिए कि उसकी मानसिक हालत क्या है, प्रतिभा क्या है, ये तो हम ज़रूर देखते हैं। मगर जैसा कि मैं हमेशा कहता हूँ, मार्कशीट सिर्फ एक तरह का सच बोलती है। 100% लाएँ या 95% लाएँ, वो सिर्फ आपके व्यक्तित्व का, आपकी कलाओं का, आपकी प्रतिभा का एक साइड बताती है। अगर कोई शख्स जिसमें कोपिंग एबिलिटी या जिंदगी की उलझनों से जूझने की क्षमता कम है, उसे भी 100% मार्क मिल सकते हैं। तो ये पहचानना टीचर्स का, अध्यापकों का कर्तव्य है कि आप किस तरह के छात्र की बात कर रहे हैं। वो कौन-कौन से लोग हैं आपके प्रांगण में, आपके यूनिवर्सिटी में जिन्हें विशेष मदद की जरूरत है और हम वो उस तरह की मदद कैसे इकट्ठा करें जिसमें ना तो स्टिग्मा आपको रोक पाए, ना हम किसी को ब्लेम गेम करें, ना हम किसी को ये कहें कि आप कमजोर हैं। कोई मन से कमजोर नाम की कोई चीज है नहीं, मगर जो बात हम एक्सप्रेस करना चाहते हैं उसके लिए कभी-कभी शब्द नहीं मिलते। जैसे सम पीपल आर वल्नरेबल, बहुत कुछ होता है, उनके घर में तो परेशानी होती, उनके खानदान में मानसिक तकलीफ रह चुकी होती, या खानदान में कोई सुसाइड से मर चुका होता है, या उनका बचपन बहुत कठिनाई में गुजरा हुआ होता है, तो ऐसे लोग वल्नरेबल होते हैं। हम उन्हें कह देते हैं कि ये कमजोर है या इनमें जोखिम या मानसिक समस्याओं के होने की संभावना अधिक है। हम अगर सारे तथ्यों को इकट्ठा करें तो हम ये जान सकते हैं कि कौन सा का शख्स किस तरह का है। और मेरा कहना है, और जितने विशेषज्ञ इस विषय में काम करते हैं उनकी ये समझ है और रिकमेंडेशन भी है कि समय ये आया है कि सुसाइड इज ए पब्लिक हेल्थ इश्यू। तो इसका क्या मतलब है? एक जमाना था हम कहते थे हमें चेचक के लिए काम करना चाहिए। एक जमाना था हम पोलियो निवारण में पूरे देश ने मिलजुल के एग्रेसिव होके काम किया, पोलियो से आप मुक्ति पा गए। मगर उसके पहले आपने ये पहचाना कि ये आपके पूरे देश की, पूरे समाज की समस्या है। मगर आज लाखों बच्चे सुसाइड अटेम्प्ट कर रहे हैं। जो गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया की रिसर्च है और जो प्राइवेट इंस्टीट्यूशन की रिसर्च है वो ये कहती है कि लगभग 50% छात्र तनाव में हैं, 15 से 17% डिप्रेशन के शिकार हैं, करीब 10% एडिक्शन से परेशान हैं, करीब 10% सुसाइड या आत्महत्या का विचार सर में लेकर घूमते हैं। ये हमारी समस्या है और अगर हम इसे अपनी आंखों से नहीं देखेंगे, जागेंगे नहीं, तो इसका कोई इंतजाम नहीं किया जा सकता। अब सवाल उठता है कि हम इसके लिए क्या करें? तो इसके लिए कई सरकारें काम करेंगी, सरकार के लेवल पे पॉलिसी बनाएंगी वगैरह वगैरह। कॉलेज और यूनिवर्सिटी अपना काम करेंगे, मगर व्यक्तिगत व्यक्ति की अगर हम बात करें तो हमें ये जानना चाहिए कि ये हमारी व्यक्तिगत क्षमताओं और हमारी समस्याओं के बीच एक जद्दोजहद है। शख्स जिसमें सुसाइड या आत्महत्या के विचार आए हैं, वो अपनी क्षमताओं से और अपने मन पर जो दबाव है, उनमें टकराव से जूझ रहा है। उस टकराव में कभी वो जीतता है, कभी समस्याएं जीतती हैं। डॉक्टर कौशिक ने अभी एम्बिवलेंस की बात की, बात सही है। कभी भी सुसाइड के विचार कंसिस्टेंट नहीं रहते, ये बदलते रहते हैं। मगर वो क्षण जब समस्याएं जीतती हैं और आदमी कमजोर होता है और उसे मदद नहीं मिलती, वो बड़ा घातक होता है। तो हम व्यक्तिगत रूप से लोगों के लिए क्या कर सकते हैं और लोगों को अपने आप के लिए क्या करना चाहिए, ये एक विषय है जिस पर हम चर्चा करें। हम इंतजार कर रहे हैं डॉक्टर शुभांगी पारकर का, जो इस विषय पर चर्चा आगे बढ़ाएंगी। फिर भी जब तक वो आए, मैं आपसे कुछ विशेष विशेष बातों पर आपका ध्यान ले जाना चाहूंगा कि किस तरह हम एक दूसरे की मदद कर सकते हैं और किस तरह हम अपने छात्रों में ये सिखा सकते हैं कि अगर समस्या हो तो वो क्या करें। पहली बात तो यह है कि व्यक्तित्व बहुत महत्वपूर्ण विषय है। छात्रों का व्यक्तित्व, उनका फ्रस्ट्रेशन टॉलरेंस, उनकी कैपेसिटी, ये एकदम उत्कृष्ट होनी चाहिए। हाल के दिनों में पढ़ाई की कुछ ऐसी व्यवस्था बनी है, यारी दोस्ती की कुछ ऐसा माहौल बना है जिसमें ना तो छात्रों के पास ज्यादा सोशल सपोर्ट रह गया है, ना पीयर सपोर्ट रह गया है, ना उनकी आंतरिक शक्ति जागृत हो पाई है। जैसे हम जानते हैं कि अगर आप फिजिकल एक्सरसाइज करेंगे तो उससे जो बायोकेमिकल चेंजेस हमारे ब्रेन में डेवलप होते हैं, उससे जिस तरह के न्यूरोकेमिकल चेंजेस होते हैं और जिस तरह से ब्रेन के सेल्स की आदत बदलती है, उससे डिप्रेशन में कमी होती है। और हम सभी जानते हैं कि तनाव से पहला सिम्टम जो दिक्कत पेश करता है वो है मानसिक उदासीनता का और फिर मानसिक अवसाद का। सो हेल्पलेसनेस, होपलेसनेस, डिसअपॉइंटमेंट एंड डिप्रेशन। मगर हम कब ये बात करते हैं कि एक्सरसाइज करना आवश्यक है? प्रांगण में कौन कौन दौड़ लगाता है, कौन खेलता है, खेल कूद के इंतजाम है कि नहीं है तो छात्रों के पास उसका समय है कि नहीं है। अब कोई कह सकता है कि ये तो मजे की चीज है, इसमें क्या करना है, किताब पढ़िए, मैथमेटिक्स, फिजिक्स, बायोलॉजी, फिलॉसफी पढ़िए, जरूर पढ़िए। मगर ये जानना आवश्यक है कि ये जो रचनाएं जिंदगी के कार्यक्रम में बैठाई गई हैं, जैसे अच्छा भोजन, अच्छी एक्सरसाइज, नींद और रिलैक्सेशन, ये 4-5 चीजें मिलके मनुष्य के मन और मस्तिष्क का सामंजस्य इस तरह से बैठाती हैं कि छोटी मोटी समस्याएं इंसान खुद उनका इलाज ढूंढ लेता है। और अगर वो इस संयम से जीता है तो बहुत सी समस्याओं पर विजय पा सकता है। जैसे बहुत से बच्चे होते हैं जो सोशली कनेक्ट नहीं कर पाते, और हम ये देखते हैं, हम बार बार ये बात करते हैं कि सोशल कनेक्टेडनेस यानी हमारे शरीर के बाहर क्या है, जो भी है वो, चाहे लोग हैं, चाहे प्रकृति है, चाहे स्कूल है या किताबें हैं, कंप्यूटर है, सबसे आपको कनेक्ट होना है। कनेक्टिविटी, इंटरपर्सनल कनेक्टिविटी हो, आदमी का आदमी से कनेक्शन हो या आदमी का विषय से कनेक्शन, उसे बढ़ाने के लिए एक क्रिएटिव थिंकिंग की आवश्यकता होती है। अभी हमने सुना कि सुसाइड की समस्या तब एक समस्या हो जाती है जब लोगों को कोई उत्तर नहीं मिलता। मतलब लोगों में जब उस सोच की कमी हो जाती है कि वो दाएं बाएं से अपना रास्ता निकाल सके। They are when unable to find alternative methods of solving a problem, then they are in difficulty. We have to teach them methods to improve their cognition in a manner so that they can always have best possible problem solving mechanism. अब ये हम कैसे करेंगे? ये तो बचपन से आप किस तरह की पढ़ाई करते हैं, क्या सिखाते हैं, रचनात्मक चीजें कैसे बताते हैं, अपने कोर्स के साथ-साथ आर्ट, ड्रामा, पेंटिंग, क्रिएटिविटी, फिलॉसफी, डिबेट, डिस्कशन, डिस्कोर्स, डायलॉग, डिसिप्लिन, ये दर्जनों चीजें हैं जो जिंदगी से गायब हो चुकी हैं। ऐसा मैं देख रहा हूँ कि लोगों के जीवन से ये गायब हो चुकी हैं और अब ये हालत हुई है कि एक स्पेशलिस्ट की जरूरत पड़ती है ये कहने के लिए कि आप जिंदगी साधारण तरह से जिए। मतलब नींद, खाना, दौड़ना, भागना, एक्सरसाइज करना जो जीवन था, उससे हमें सिखाना पड़ रहा है। खैर, पड़ रहा है तो जरूर सिखाना चाहिए, मगर ये बदलाव हर लेवल पे आना चाहिए। चाहे वो परिवार का हो, दोस्तों की संगत का हो या स्कूल का हो या इंस्टीट्यूशन का हो। बहरहाल इस समय मैं सोचता हूँ कि थोड़ा ब्रेक लेते हैं और हम देखते हैं कि if there is anybody who wants to make a comment or ask any question to Dr. Kaushik, please, you are welcome. We will have 10 minutes for question answer. Nobody? Okay. Can we, is Dr. Devedi, do you have any comments to make? Mr. Hemant Dixit, can you tell us, can you unmute yourself and talk about the program and how you see it moving forward, please?
डॉक्टर साहब, इतना ये ज्वलंत विषय है ये
जी
कि इस पे जितना भी हम काम करें कम है। और हमारी आपकी तो कोशिश यही है कि जिन छात्रों के आंखों में आंसू हैं उनकी आंखों में हम आशाएं भर दें।
क्या बात,
और
तो कर रहे हैं, बहुत कर रहे हैं। और
अब जो लोग भी इसमें पार्ट ले रहे हैं, हम ये उन सब की भूमिका बन जाती है कि इस मिशन को गंभीरता से लें और सब साथ आए। और ऐसा नहीं हम लोग कोई कोशिश करेंगे तो हम लोग सफल नहीं होंगे, बिल्कुल सफल होंगे हम लोग। और जो बीड़ा आपने उठाया है, ये हिम्मत भी बहुत कम लोगों में है।
मैंने तो धन्यवाद। ये जितने भी लोग इन 4 दिनों में हमसे जुड़े हैं, हम चाहते हैं कि वे हमारे मानसिक शक्ति परिवार का हिस्सा रहें, हमारे साथ बने रहें, हमें बताएं कि क्या करना चाहिए, किस दिशा में जाना चाहिए, इस कार्यक्रम को कैसे आगे ले जाना चाहिए। So, is there anybody else who wants to make any comment? Manishank, do you have anything to say?
Thank you, Dr. Saab. So, yes, I just wanted to express my views about Mnasik Shakri.
Yes, please.
And एक छोटी सी कहानी है मेरे पास भी, जैसे आप लोगों ने इतनी कहानियां सुनाई. So that kahani inspires me a lot, and it is about a person known as Dashrath Manjhi, whom we also know as the Mountain Man. So he used to stay in Gaya, Bihar, and his village was in between the hills. वो पहाड़ों से घिरा हुआ उनका गांव था, और शहर अस्पताल जो है वो पहाड़ के उस पार हुआ करता था। तो उनकी वाइफ प्रेग्नेंट थी और वो उनको अस्पताल ले जाते अस्पताल में एक बच्ची को जन्म देते हुए उनकी मृत्यु हो जाती है, क्योंकि वो देर से पहुंचते हैं। तो दशरथ मांझी ये डिसाइड करते हैं कि मैं यहाँ रास्ता बनाऊंगा, और वो एक हथौड़ी छेनी लेके विद अ हैमर एंड अ चिजल 22 साल उन्होंने पहाड़ खोदा और उन्होंने वहां एक रास्ता बना दिया। तो ऐसा मुझे लगता है कि अगर सही दिशा में मानसिक शक्ति को यूज किया जाए, उस सिचुएशन में वो खुद भी मेरे ख्याल से किसी भी मानसिक बीमारी का शिकार हो सकते थे, be it depression, be it suicidal, whatever it may, but he turned it around and he used that energy as a motivation to do something. So I think that this is what Mnasik mental strength or mental health can do to any person, no matter what the situation is.
It is, these are baby steps that we are taking. रास्ता बहुत लंबा है, मगर सब साथ मिलकर चलेंगे तो जरूर पहुंचेंगे जो हम चाहते हैं, जिस परिवर्तन की हम उम्मीद करते हैं वो कैसे आए, इसके लिए विचार विमर्श बहुत जरूरी है। बहुत बार होता है कि हम अच्छे काम के लिए आगे बढ़ते हैं, मगर पीछे मुड़ के देखते हैं तो लगता है हम गलत रास्ते से आ गए। हमारे पास समय नहीं है ऐसी गलतियां करने के लिए, और आवश्यकता इस बात की है कि सुसाइड प्रिवेंशन इज एवरीबॉडीज बिजनेस। और मैं ये कहूंगा कि इस सुसाइड से ज्यादा हमें बात करनी चाहिए बच्चों के मानसिक तनाव की, क्योंकि हम एक एक्सट्रीम स्टेप की बात कर रहे हैं। अगर हम इतना भी, जैसा कि मैं बार बार कहता हूं कि हमें नए उत्तर की अपेक्षा है, नया जमाना है, नई समस्याएं हैं, और हमारे ये जो यंग ब्राइट स्टूडेंट्स हैं, इन्हीं से सही जवाब सामने आएगा। इन्हीं को अपनी जिंदगी में अनुशासन लाना है, मेंटल रिलैक्सेशन की बातें सीखनी है, तो इन्हें समझना है। जिस दिन इनके दिमाग में ये बात बैठ जाएगी कि to remain relaxed and live happily is more important than running around behind so many other objectives, that day our job will be done. अब वो कैसे आएगा, इतना बड़ा सामाजिक मनोवैज्ञानिक परिवर्तन कैसे होगा, ये तो मैं नहीं कह सकता, लेकिन होगा जरूर, ऐसी आशा तो मुझे है। Okay, I'm just waiting. Dr. Parker is going to join. Until then, we continue. Is Dr. Devidi has left, or he's there? No. Is there anybody else? Any question till the time that we are? So I see Dr. Ramesh Chauhan. Welcome, Kaka.
Mute off करें बोले.
Can you unmute yourself, Dr. Chauhan?
Yeah.
Dr. Ramesh Chauhan, we welcome you. आपका स्वागत है, और आपसे हम सुनना चाहेंगे इस विषय में आप क्या कहते हैं?
I would love to tell you one story.
Yes, please. Let me introduce. We are talking to Dr. Ramesh Chauhan. Is a pediatric surgeon in Mumbai. He is a senior citizen and he has seen life in his own way. He is a friend, philosopher, guide, and now we listen to him. Please.
Yeah, thank you so much. I will just tell one story. I don't know whether you remember, in Mumbai, there was a biggest psychiatrist named, first psychiatrist rather you can say, is Dr. Marfadia.
Yes.
And he has written lots of books and he used to take us the lectures.
Yes.
And one of his this thing, just to impress upon this problem of committing suicide, he told us one story. He said he was called because somebody is threatening to commit suicide. So he went all the way to some place in Fountain, and the flat was on the 7th floor and the lift was not working. So he climbed up and he met the child, and he took everything about this story, and he came back. When he came down, he forgot to mention one thing to the parents. To impress on our mind, what he said, that he climbed all those 7th floor at that time in his old age. And he called the relatives again and he told him this: see, if you feel if the child is threatening that he will commit a suicide, don't underestimate him. It might be his threat, but the problem is, in one of his threats, he might succeed. And he said he told them that, and then he came down again 7th floor, And he said within another few days, that child again tried to commit a suicide. So I remember that story at that time, right in the beginning, when we were only doing our MBBS studies.
Yes.
After I did, and being a general surgeon and pediatric surgeon, I have operated many adults as well as their children, as well as their grandchildren. And I have seen that what is required in today's families is their way to talk to their children. They hardly talk to their children. And they have no time because they themselves have their own worries. And many people do not know what exactly this mental health is. So it's good that program what we are doing is definitely will convince the other people, so that at least it is and as you said, it is not a doctor's or a psychiatrist's job. It is everybody's job these days, because the magnanimity of this problem has increased to such an extent that I see in my neighbors, in my near neighbors, the relatives everywhere. This problem is there, because they hardly have a time to talk to their grandchildren or children. So at least the grandparents have got enough time to sit and talk to their grandchildren.
Yes, thank you, Kaka, and we welcome your ideas. And this reminds me that there are a number of risk situations in a person who has recently is expressing the ideas of suicide or has made an attempt, serious or non-serious. Both remain at risk until the time their problems are sorted out.
Yes, very true.
So we have to be, as parents, as anybody in society, we have to be mindful that visualize something which is not seen. It's an injury on the mind which speaks. The person is expressing, I don't feel like living. Why? When you ask him why, then he will tell, but there is nobody to ask why. Even when you see the nature of friend circle of young students today has changed, there are the quality of human connection is going down, down, down. So the protective net, the level of confidence कि मेरे लिए कोई है, मेरे लिए कोई सुनेगा, कोई मेरी बात सुनेगा, किसी से संवाद होगा, ये संभावनाएं समाप्त होती जा रही हैं. If you ask today, I mean, let me bring that point here. That currently in the United States, the point of discussion is this. The Surgeon General, Dr. Murthy of United States, has given loneliness as a problem for discussion. True, loneliness is a problem in America, and it is a problem everywhere else. But look at how they have for taking the discussion forward in an intelligent way. It has been placed at the highest level of agenda for discussion. Now the discussion, the whole country is discussing loneliness. It's a diagnosis, it's a disease, it's a perspective, it's an emotion, etc., etc. Well, I hope we in India, people can generate this kind of discussion, and people who matter in society talk about it, and something changes. What is more important is change that is required. What we are interested that if we can convince families that before you send your children to A, B, or C type of study, make sure that you assess them appropriately. Assess and believe your own assessment. Number of times when some tragedy happens and you ask neighbors, friends and family, 50% time they say, हाँ ये तो ऐसा होने वाला था, ऐसा लग रहा था, ऐसा होगा. भाई जब लग रहा था तो कुछ किया क्यों नहीं? So the inkling is always there, but people do not believe their own findings. They see the wound, they do not believe. They know what are the weak points of the child we are talking about. But still, because of social pressure, lack of opportunity in career, in society, in this world, they push beyond a certain degree of tolerance, and the young man is under obligation of emotions. उसे अपने परिवार को, अपने पेरेंट्स को, माता पिता को खुश रखना है, उनके पैसे नहीं बर्बाद करने, जरूरत से ज्यादा पढ़ना है, इंटरेस्ट है तो भी पढ़ना है, नहीं है तो भी पढ़ना है, हर हालत में ये हमारे यहाँ मतलब ऑप्शन है नहीं। आप चाहे भी, अगर आपने 2 साल के बाद ये डिसाइड किया कि मुझे इंजीनियरिंग या मेडिसिन नहीं अच्छी लगती, तो यू हैव नथिंग, यू कांट डू इट, यू कैन नॉट चेंज इट। तो इसलिए जब ऐसी हालत है तो असेसमेंट तो होना चाहिए कि आप जिसके लिए आप लोन ले रहे हैं, जिसके लिए आप अपनी जिंदगी खपा रहे हैं, क्या वो ये करना चाहता है। और दूसरी बात, हमारे बच्चों को भी ये सीखना जरूरी है कि वो बोले और संवाद करें। अगर उनके मन में दुख है, पेन है, कोई तकलीफ है, तो उसे जब तक वो कहेंगे नहीं, तब तक उसका समाधान नहीं होगा। कॉलेज का कल्चर चेंज होना चाहिए, ये बात तो सही है, मगर ये सब बहुत सारी चीजें, जैसे कि मैंने कहा, समाज के हर हिस्से को, हर टुकड़े को ये बात करनी पड़ेगी। जिस तरह हमने पोलियो और स्मॉल पॉक्स के बारे में आज से 30, 35, 40 साल पहले चर्चा की, बात किया, समस्याएं पहचानी और उसका निवारण किया, हमने देखा कि हम जीते, ठीक उसी तरह की समस्या आज छात्रों के मानसिक स्वास्थ्य की। मैं कहता हूं, दिस इज ए एपिडेमिक नॉकिंग एट योर डोर। आप मुझे बताएं कि समाज में अगर हर मोहल्ले में, हर एक घर छोड़ के एक घर में कोई बुखार से पीड़ित है, तो आप ऐसे मोहल्ले को क्या कहेंगे? क्या ये महामारी नहीं है? क्या ये एपिडेमिक नहीं है? क्या ये समाज की समस्या नहीं है? अगर ये समस्या ऐसी होती कि वहां जाना मुश्किल होता लोगों का, तो आप इस मोहल्ले में रहते? नहीं रहते, छोड़ देते। तो ये समस्याएं जो दिखाई नहीं पड़ रही हैं, इन्हें देखने का प्रयत्न करिए, कहना मुझे सिर्फ ये है। और इज देयर एनीबडी एल्स, एनी मोर कमेंट दैट anybody wants to share any thoughts? We still have time, 5-10 minutes.
Evening, sir.
Yes.
आपने एक बुक का जिक्र किया था, Amazon में अवेलेबल है. Could you please repeat the title of the book? I missed the title of the book, sir. The latecomers will be benefited by that.
No, thank you. No, this is a book, Handle Life with Care. ये स्टूडेंट सुसाइड के बारे में है, करीब 450 पेज की है।
क्या है सर टाइटल?
हैंडल लाइफ विद केयर।
हैंडल लाइफ विद केयर, ओके सर, थैंक यू सो मच।
आज ही वो लिस्ट हुई है अमेज़न में। और इसका जो हिंदी संस्करण है उसका नाम है कॉलेज का जीवन। ये एक महीने, जब हम सितंबर महीने में प्रोग्राम कर रहे होंगे, उसके पहले दिन आपको मिलेगी। तो आप जो लोग इस विषय के बारे में ज्यादा जानना चाहते हैं, वो किताब मंगाएं, पढ़ें। बहुत सारे सवालों का जवाब उसमें कुछ हद तक मिलेगा। हमारे इस प्रोग्राम में किताबों का पब्लिकेशन, इंटरनेट रिसोर्स, वेबसाइट पे मेंटल हेल्थ इंफॉर्मेशन का जो पीस है, हमारा उस पर बहुत स्ट्रांग फोकस है, हमारी पूरी नजर उस पर है। इसलिए हर तरह से हम चाहते हैं, चाहे वो यूट्यूब में हो, इलेक्ट्रॉनिक मीडिया में हो, ऑडियो विजुअल, ओनली ऑडियो, पॉडकास्ट, यूट्यूब चैनल, पब्लिकेशन ऑफ बुक्स, रिसर्च, डेवलपमेंट ऑफ रिपोर्ट्स एंड मोनोग्राफ, इस पे एक पूरी टीम है जो काम कर रही है। और मैं आपको बताऊं कि जो हमारे गेस्ट फैकल्टीज यहाँ लेक्चर दे रहे हैं, उनके पूरे लेक्चर किंग जॉर्जेस मेडिकल यूनिवर्सिटी लखनऊ में डॉक्टर पवन गुप्ता एसोसिएट एडिटर हैं, जो ये सारी सूचनाएं कंपाइल कर रहे हैं और हिंदी में ट्रांसलेट कर रहे हैं। नवंबर के महीने में जब हम प्रोग्राम कर रहे होंगे, तब आप ये दोनों किताब अमेज़न पे प्रकाशित पाएंगे। आप इसे खरीद सकते हैं, पढ़ सकते हैं। और मुझे उम्मीद है कि जो यूनिवर्सिटीज या कॉलेजेस ऑनलाइन कोर्स या ऑफलाइन कोर्स या हाइब्रिड कोर्स शुरू करेंगे, उनके लिए ये बैकग्राउंड मटेरियल रेडी रहेगा। हमारा मकसद ये है कि एक तरफ ऑनलाइन कोर्स करिकुलम की किताबें और उसकी डिजाइन हम साथ में रखें। जो भी इंस्टीट्यूशन चाहे, एकेडमिक इंस्टीट्यूशन हो, यूनिवर्सिटी हो या रिसर्च इंस्टीट्यूशन हो या कोई कॉलेज हो या कोई प्राइवेट ट्यूशन कॉलेज हो, जिन्हें सेंसिटाइजेशन प्रोग्राम चलाना हो या टीचर्स की का अवेयरनेस प्रोग्राम चलाना हो, उनके लिए जो लॉजिस्टिक्स चाहिए वो हम दे सकें, ऐसा हमारा प्रयास रहेगा। Any more question, please? Any more discussion point?
Thank you, sir.
सर गुड इवनिंग, मैं रुचिका वर्मा।
hi,
मेरा एक क्वेश्चन था।
Please.
हेलो सर, मैं ये पूछना चाह रही थी कि जैसे हम लोग जैसे लाइक अब कॉलेजेस में since UGC has introduced the Center for Vocational and Skill Development courses, and in this we include soft skill development and many skills which are required for a better life.
Right.
तो जैसे क्योंकि मैं साइकोलॉजी डिपार्टमेंट की भी कन्वीनर हूँ और करियर काउंसलिंग की भी मैं कन्वीनर हूँ, साथ ही साथ हम एक सेंटर फॉर हैप्पीनेस एंड वेलबीइंग अपने कॉलेज में चला रहे हैं। तो मेरा क्वेश्चन ये था कि हम क्या इस तरह का कोई एक छोटा 15 दिन का 20 दिन का एक छोटा सा कोर्स चलाएं कुछ हैप्पीनेस से रिलेटेड, विच कैन गिव लॉट ऑफ अवेयरनेस अबाउट मेंटल हेल्थ, और अगर इसमें हमें कुछ गाइडेंस चाहिए तो क्या आपकी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन हमें किस हद तक मदद कर सकती है?
हम आपकी I fully appreciate your efforts and your involvement, and you are an example for encouragement for us. I would definitely support आपको जो आवश्यकता होगी उस तरह की नॉलेज बेस कंटेंट करिकुलम। मैं आपको जिस कोर्स की आप बात कर रहे हैं उसका नाम है सेल्फ डेवलपमेंट कोर्स फॉर अबाउट से 30 hours कोर्स, हाउ टू इंक्रीज रेजिलियंस, पॉजिटिविटी, फ्रस्ट्रेशन टॉलरेंस एक्सेट्रा। मैं आपको उसका करिकुलम बना के दे सकता हूं। आप अपना ईमेल अपना आप कांटेक्ट में रहें और हम इस पे इस बात को आगे बढ़ाएंगे। हम चाहेंगे कि आप औरों से भी कहें कि ये कोर्स शुरू करें। मैं आपको कोर्स का जो डिजाइन है वो आपको मैं दूंगा, वो हमारे पास है, जो मैं भेज दूंगा आपको।
जी।
इसकी जरूरत है कि सेल्फ डेवलपमेंट कोर्स।
थैंक यू सो मच सर, क्योंकि मुझे लगता है
जी हाँ बोलिए, आप बोलिए बात।
जी सर, क्योंकि सर हमें लगता है कि हम जी सर, हमें ये लगता है कि हमें ना केवल अभी स्टूडेंट से एक संवाद करने की जरूरत है, बल्कि हमारी जो फैकल्टी मेंबर है इवन वो भी बहुत बार ऐसी समस्याएं और ऐसी परिस्थितियां लेके आती हैं। तो हमें लगता है कि ना केवल हम स्टूडेंट्स को एड्रेस करें बल्कि हम फैकल्टी मेंबर्स को भी एड्रेस करें। तो मेरी ये कोशिश रहेगी कि मैं आपसे
हाँ प्लीज देखिए, हमें ये नहीं भूलना चाहिए कि हमारे समाज में 20% लोगों को मानसिक बीमारियां और उतने ही लोग मानसिक बीमारियां नहीं है उन्हें, मगर वो बिल्कुल उसके करीब है। तो अगर फैकल्टीज में 10 में से 2-3 डिप्रेशन के शिकार हैं, डायबिटीज से परेशान हैं, उन्हें स्ट्रेस है, तो कोई आश्चर्य की बात नहीं है। मामला ये है कि उनके मानसिक स्वास्थ्य के लिए हमने कोई काम नहीं किया। तो पहला काम ये है, जब हम टीचर से कहते हैं कि आप बच्चों के मानसिक स्वास्थ्य पर ध्यान दीजिए, तो हमें उनके पॉजिटिव मेंटल हेल्थ का कार्यक्रम चलाना चाहिए। हर कॉलेज में ये होना चाहिए। उसके लिए क्या करना है, मैं ये तो इंडिविजुअल कॉलेजेस पे छोड़ूंगा कि वो उस मामला उसे आगे बढ़ाएं, मगर इसकी तो जरूरत है। जैसे इंडस्ट्रीज में प्रोग्राम चलता है, एम्प्लॉय असिस्टेंस प्रोग्राम चलता है, वेलबींग प्रोग्राम सारे इंडस्ट्री ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में चलते हैं। इसी तरह टीचर्स के लिए व्हाई नॉट, कोई फर्क, वो भी उसी कैटेगरी में है सब लोग। Let's see if Dr. Parker is joining us. Dr. Kaushik, would you like to, there were a couple of questions asked and we hope that you can respond to the question of risk assessment. Is it?
Yes, sir. I have been listening into the questions that everybody has been saying. It's beneficial, like such kind of platform that Mnasik Shakri is providing, that is very beneficial in a sense. This happens every time when we go to schools and colleges for wellness. It seems that teachers are have a problem of their own, but there is no way to address that. We address on students, but the people do face a lot of problems about the stress. जैसे आपने बताया कि उनको भी डायबिटीज है, उनको भी घर में परेशानी है, and some form of happiness program या resilience program अगर उनमें नहीं करेंगे तो they will never be able to become successful counselors in their daily life. So in that way, I completely agree with the plan which ma'am was saying about it.
Dr. Kaushik, there is a question, and the question is,
can you? Yes, sir.
I am reading the question for you. How do you recognize if somebody has mental health problem
and needs support?
And needs support? So in your institution, what do you tell parents? How do you find out if some student has mental health problem and needs support? How do you go about it? I will comment on it afterward, but I want to hear from you.
Okay, sir. Like one problem with the whole of mental illness and psychiatry is that it goes in a continuum, in that it starts with very normal feelings of sadness or low mood, but then it quickly becomes a abnormal feeling of sadness and low mood. So a few markers that we have, or even not only we, जो World Health Organization है, WHO, उनका जो ICD-10 जो हमारा kind of classificatory system है साइकेट्री का, वो हमें जो बोलता है वो ये है कि एटलीस्ट दो चीज देखना चाहिए कि उसका डिस्ट्रेस और डिसफंक्शन. तो अगर कोई भी बच्चा है या कोई भी हमारे यहाँ पे फैकल्टी है, रेसिडेंट है, कोई भी है, तो एक तो है कि हमें ये देखना चाहिए जो बोल रहा है कि उसको घबराहट हो रहा है, बेचैनी हो रहा है या उदासी हो रहा है, स्ट्रेस हो रहा है. एक तो मेंटल हेल्थ के लिए उसको अगर कोई भी बोले, इफ अ पर्सन इज कंप्लेनिंग, ही हैज ऑलरेडी ब्रोकन अ थ्रेशोल्ड. मतलब अगर हमें छोटे मोटे कुछ होते तो हम आमतौर पे किसी को बोलते नहीं है, बट द मोमेंट वी आर कम्युनिकेटिंग हमारा डिस्ट्रेस इतना ज्यादा हो गया है कि हमें खुद से मैनेज नहीं होता है. सो दैट वेरी फैक्ट ऑफ कम्युनिकेशन इज टेकन एज अ पॉइंट ऑफ सिवियरिटी की नहीं, इसके लिए कुछ ना कुछ तो इनको सपोर्ट की जरूरत है, तभी ये बोल रहे हैं. द सेकेंड हार्ड पॉइंट इज डिसफंक्शन, कि उनका रोजमर्रे की जो काम है उसमें सडनली हैज देयर बीन एनी चेंज इन दैट फंक्शनिंग. कि पहले वो स्कूल आता था, क्लास में भी सही करता था, अचानक से उनका क्लास और स्कूल का जो परफॉर्मेंस है वो खराब हो गया है, या वो जैसे पहले बातें करते थे आजकल वो उतना बातें नहीं करते, सोशल इंटरेक्शंस खराब हो गए हैं. सो दीज टू आर काइंड ऑफ द बिहेवियरल मार्कर्स जिसके लिए कोई मानसिक मतलब साइकेट्री या साइकोलॉजी की जरूरत नहीं होता है, इवन सिंपली हम उसको एसेस करके बोल सकते हैं. So that would be my quick thought in doing that. Then there are of course various scales and screening instruments that we regularly use. तो हमारे जितने भी स्टूडेंट आते हैं उसका ऑनसेट में ही जब वो कॉलेज में एंट्री लेते हैं उनके सब में हम एक मेंटल हेल्थ क्वेश्चन लगाते हैं, जिसमें एक SCL सिम्टम चेकलिस्ट करके एक आइटम है और कुछ कुछ साइकोलॉजिकल आइटम है जिससे हमें उससे पता चलता है कि उनका स्ट्रेस क्या है. तो दैट इज नॉट इन अ वे कि दैट इज नॉट एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव, उसके बेसिस पे उसका पोस्टिंग या कुछ चेंज नहीं होता है. दैट गिव्स अस अ मार्कर कि इसको ज्यादा सपोर्ट की जरूरत है, तो उनको वहीं से स्टूडेंट वेलनेस में रेगुलर फॉलो अप के लिए बोल दिया जाता है और उन्हें खास मेंटर दिया जाता है जो उनको फॉलो अप करे कि ऐसा चीजें है. दैट वुड बी फ्रॉम माय साइड सर. आई विल हैंड ओवर टू यू.
Yeah, no, thank you. We will take it up again, but let's first listen to our second speaker. I welcome Dr. Shubhangi Parker. Shubha, welcome. Dr. Parker is a former academic dean of the KEM Hospital, Mumbai, St. GS Medical College. She is one of the celebrated academician and researcher in the field of suicide prevention and mental health education. We have been working very closely in this subject for more than 3 decades, and it's wonderful to have you, Shubha.
Thank you. Thank you.
Over to you. We want to
Can
listen.
you hear me? Yeah.
So
can I share my slides?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Is it working out? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saving. I'm just okay.
Is it working out? We had made you a host, so should be possible.
See, I think you have disabled my screen sharing. Please, will you?
No, I haven't. Yeah, host.
Can I start? My screen sharing is stopped on your side.
I'm working on that.
Okay.
Yeah, you can now do that. Yes. Is it working now?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Is it working out, Shubha?
Yes, I am just.
Okay. Take your time. No problem.
Yes.
We have. It's now you and the participants. You will speak about your topic and discuss things with. We have very encouraging audience today. Participants. There are questions. People want to know things, especially because Times of India published a couple of stories last 10 days, and yes, okay.
You can see that now?
Yes. Go ahead, please.
Yes. Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Suicide is a behavior. There is a lot of loss of, and believe very important, because if the people are in control situations, negative events and emotions, that's not going to be the outcome. Okay, so in such a when we look at how we do self-develop and take self-care, to save us from the action of suicide, suicidal act, suicidal ideation. Of course, the ideation is something which can happen to everybody. I think feeling sad, feeling devastated, feeling despair, feeling desperate, feeling hopeless, it's something which happens to human being, and that's not something which we can prevent so far when our brain is acting. Okay, but what we can prevent is taking the steps, the destructive steps through our development of our personality, the way we control our emotions, the way emotions. So that's what I'm Suicide feeling can be perplexing, terrifying. I think nobody is comfortable when one feels that one is going to take one's life. It is a situation which is desperate, which is a demanding situation to deal with. And this feeling can range from having overall thoughts wanting to be here in this world to make a plan of could end your life. So these are very things. These the feelings which probably one comfortable, easily. And that's a reason why we to look at how do we with the things. A different suicidal feeling, let us look at that, when we are talking about self-care. To get familiar, hopeless, like there is no point in living, that things are happening in a way. So why should we that kind of feeling? People are overwhelmed by negative thoughts. Now, this aspect of overwhelm is very important because one really cannot be logical, overwhelmed by negative thoughts. Unbearable pain that you in ending. Something which is a very, very important, useless, not wanted or not needed by others. This is feeling. This we can link to disappointment reaction. We can link to the guilt of doing something. So this is a feeling where one feels that, it's not worth being there, as people are not desperate, as if you have no. So far, we were thinking that hopelessness is something, if it appears along with depression, that probably is a deciding factor of suicide, in depression. Nevertheless, we understand that feeling desperate, as if you have no other choice, is another which probably is associated depression can lead to suicide. Like, better off without you, strange though it sounds, but this is a very important feeling people have pretty often, that I am trouble to others, I am burden to others, I am burden to my mother, I am burden to my sibling, I am not working, I am not employed, I am not contributing in the life. And in such a situation, one probably feels guilty and burdensome. And that's where, the feeling comes that my people would be good if I am not around. Cut off from your body or physically numb. Now, this is very important. Our clients and patients tell us, Madam, I have never understood what was happening to me. I was not in the position to think rationally, logically. My mind was not working, as if everything was standstill and there was a numbness. So this is a very important thing. Fascinated by death, especially in young people. I have seen a couple of people above 50 also thinking about, this fascination by death. And that is also irrational, basically, because it sounds philosophical for some people. It's juncture. It is so attractive, but it is not. Tempted to do risky or reckless things. Now, this is very important. And this is to identify, because many times people, before they do suicidal act, they are drinking enormously, they are driving recklessly, and or they are doing some risky behavior. I mean, I know one of my patients was walking on the terrace at the corner, and that was really reckless, risky behavior before, he actually committed suicide by, self-poisoning. So some of these very important experiences we must understand when we try to help our clients, or when we try to help, as a common lay person. What you may experience, as a suicidal person, people probably under pressure to communicate. I mean, it's not easy to communicate. Self-loathing and low self-esteem, one is not confident, desires to self-harm in many ways, unable to tell someone. Basically, there are many people at that juncture. You find nobody who's trustworthy where you can communicate, suicide. Unsure of what to tell. How do I tell people that I want to end my life? Maybe I will be hurting my beloved people. And that's why concern that they understand. And this is sometimes happen, like recently, I work now in the tribal area, where Adivasis are there. The life is very simple, but it's very different here. They probably, when somebody talks about suicide in the house and they feel that that person is threatening, is not going to do it, basically, and there is no need to do it, fearful of being judged. People do think that, this person is coward, this person has no guts, this person has no courage to face the problem, and worried you will upset many of them. So these experiences go through when they think about, and it's difficult, to communicate. Creating a suicide safety plan is a very, very important perspective for people. This safety plan can change to age, it may change children, it may change for elderly, but this is a very important perspective when people or common layperson realize that there is such a kind of feeling in coming in the mind. So what one should be doing? The work with us, maybe friend, maybe mother, maybe somebody who is a different person, but get people involved in the suicide safety plan, that people should understand that this is trouble and we need to do something. Set the plan while you are feeling well, think clearly. I heard with my client, suicide comes when it is a mind, when it is just thoughts and going. That is the time attend to ourselves and start understanding that why we are going to do, and which probably prevents us. I mean, I that don't get into toxic of depression, of hopelessness. Just start it when you are feeling disturbed about it. Put your suicide safety plan often, because when it's suicidal ideation, the cognitive thinking blurred, and people may not remember what did I think about it, how I thought that I should come out of it. To put it on the paper, discuss it out in detail with friends, in a place where you can easily find should the need arise. That means when you are toxically feeling that this is to end my life, so at that time, suicide. Your suicide safety plan should include several. It is very important that how am I going to do? How I get the whole thing in writing. Okay. Now the first step, identify warning signs. Think about the types of circumstances. Maybe it is debt. It is fear, the images, the views, the feelings, the behaviors that might precede or accompany suicidal urges for young people. Okay, this is an important perspective for us to learn. Okay, list these warning signs so that you can refer back to them. Okay, like, see, when I feel that the life, when I feel that I won't be able to achieve the things which I want to, and if those feelings are coming, we should be, alert about it. Helpful to familiarize yourself with some of the risk factor for suicide in order to recognize these warnings. So when I feel that is the time I should think that I must with the people, because that feeling perplexed, that is sometimes over, and really cannot think clearly about it. So we need really to identify warning signs, the warning emotions and warning ideas, and get ready to help ourselves or and keen or friends. Stop ways to calm and relax. I think this is very important. So know that there are particular ways to relax ourselves, to make take ourselves to the serene platform. I mean, I know listening to Lata Mangeshkar's songs, beautiful songs, keep me or if get opportunity to walk 2-3 kilometers, that keep me. So everybody probably the way to relax oneself. So plan, people must identify what are these is by which we can make ourselves relax. Mind-body methods that have helped others, such as breathing exercise or body or a simple meditation or a simple in India. I tell my people, believe in God, and if you chanting, why not do chanting? Simple thing. But if you have belief, chanting also relaxes many. Use this, in people who probably that look at different ways to that might be helpful. Okay, for example, if there is a stress, studying, stress of performing, situation, talking to our friends who are doing, in performance, we should talk to them. A simple thing, come on, relax. Let me tell you, better way for you to study. Don't get toxic. Whatever you have done so far, try to remember it. So some of this aspect, sometimes very simple aspect, know what are those simple. Okay, reason for living typically are unique to their situation, and we should, I mean, there were situations so far, but we wanted to live at this situation. Our family and friends, especially not wanting to hurt them by dying by suicide. One patient, failed so many times, and he said, after coming from the interview, positive reply, he felt suicidal, and he managed to died or on it, and he said, I also my mother who worked so hard to bring me in this world and me, she has gone through so, and I feel that I shouldn't hurt her. And his suicidal idea got aborted. Pets in particular are worried they would be taken to a shelter or after their own. I am a pet lover. I am an animal. It's important to this particular people who love them to the want to hurt. So there are people, there are old people. Yes, I am surviving. My sweet cat, my sweet dog is with me. Sounds so simple, fair, but it can people, survival mode. Death and the unknown. You feel if I try to die, will be like that? Will it be scary? Will it be heartbreaking? Reason why this is a one reason do not want to survive. Of possibility to others to stay alive. Important in our country, like mother who probably is a victim of the violence, who know enough money to, okay, and she feels this is too is hopeless. It's not for me to live in this world. At the same time, she thinks, what would, to my children if I decide to die or if I go away from So that possibility sense is a very, very important here. A belief that suicide is against them, or more generally fear of going to hell. I think not religious, or but if people that it won't be good to do this, God or my, will not. So then this is really a hope even amid suffering will get better. I think the people who probably do drastic are those who generally find themselves to be hopeful in difficult situations. So they have dreamed good life ahead. So the hope is an important perspective for us to understand. Emotion is one of the important things when we want to suicide prevention. Emotion is the ability to manage effectively to let emotions and mood dictate. So feeling hopeless doesn't mean that in the suicidal act and is depressed. So emotional regulation, this component of suicide prevention. Right? The emotions are, are not under control. There is an issue with impulse control, issue with the guilt control. So we probably need to understand that regulated emotions are not experience our can be positive, they can be negative, but they will influence our thoughts, behavior, mental health. How we respond to emotions determines how well we manage through difficulties. If we are hopeful, control our anger, if we control our rage, control our guilt, perhaps over the suicidal ideation. Emotion regulation is regulation I want to but these are easy one. Triggered by emotions. Some people especially on any feeling because feeling bigger, harder to manage. Guilty for doing something, feeling revengeful, won't express that. We get overwhelmed with that. The situation, we want to choose appropriate emotions they experience. Right? This is a very, very, we allow people, they feel. Separating actions triggered by emotions. The feeling, make us feeling angry, make us so aggressive. Want to give the ability to inhibit negative actions, striking out at someone or angry or hurt. Yes, I used to keep some wall, and when you get angry, start whatever negative you want on that picture. Third is modulating response triggered by emotions. Our role generally is to help young people, and this is emotional regulation is more appropriate for, and we understand what they are feeling, what their thoughts, urges are, because they are not up to certain level. So we want to help them by what they want to do, and then ask themselves how to respond in an appropriate way. Angry, killing somebody, all happen when one is young, but probably we how they can channel, how they can modulate this response by emotion. Then they should respond to those urges. So how to do that? They must have the specific emotions you are feeling. That is maybe anger, maybe guilt, hopeless, maybe desperate. I specific. Okay, acknowledge the feeling and sit with it without judging. Okay, feeling hopeless probably is not a bad thing, you know. I shouldn't blame myself that why am I feeling helpless. Pretty often it happens with people that when they feel helpless or hopeless, they feel angry. How can, but we have to tell people that it is possible, you know, in a negative way, in a very violent, probably is in a critical situation. Learning to verbalize what got them to this emotional place, them to be feeling helpless because they lost money. They identify own strategies for self-soothing, meditation, time, deep breathing, looking at the sky, looking at the birds, simple things. Okay, practice cons before acting on emotions. Very important. These are normal, but consequences. So in such a situation, we need to understand, you must take a minute to understand if I'm angry and if I want to bash somebody, what would happen? You know, maintain a healthy lifestyle necessary for emotional regulation. Now, healthy lifestyle, physical and mental well-being. So eating well, relaxing well, finding out time to relax, finding out good friends, okay, having good hobbies. Now, sometimes when one is in crisis, getting in a hobby like singing, painting is really positive. And that's what people should do immediately. So don't about the hobbies. In fact, pretty often are life-saving because you can by being proactive or being, you know, feeling happy about the hobbies. Enhancing life skills, a very, but many of us don't know that. How do we that? How do we can do that? Life skills are a key protective factors for suicide, and they include critical thinking. You know, that when I think, you know, suicidal, what is that I'm losing? You know, what is that, you know, I will be hurting? Rational thinking, what's the logic behind, you know, ending oneself? You know, really work hard. I read in between the story of the woman. Why I am telling you is, you know, the suicidal death of Mr. Nitin Desai, a fantastic, you know, and extremely famous art director, very creative. Those who have seen Lal Bagh Ka Raja in Mumbai, you know, I have seen it every year, and that was done by Nitin Desai. So he probably lost with such a huge debt, you know, and harassing by those people. But I know a woman, you know, who have done the 500 crore business. I read about her after losing her husband, you know, who probably done suicide because he was in debt. I think the rational, logical thinking helps because that gives us the direction. Maybe the time is difficult, but with rational thinking, we know that days will change. ये दिन भी बदल जाएंगे, you know. ये बहुत important है. Stress management always, you know, we must learn this. We must get it, you know, organized for ourselves. But stress should be, you know, managed in most powerful, in most productive way. Conflict resolution is another. I think we can take the whole lecture on how one can get into win-win situation with the life by resolving conflict. Because conflict is sometimes, will I be able to do it? And I think we resolve, it gives us the power to, because we have done the most of the positive, we fought the negativity, and that gives of conviction. And that's a, you know, conflict resolution, not just a kind of thinking. It is a very reasonable scientific aspect, you know, to go ahead in the life. problem solving strategies, and coping skills. Now, these are all needs to be addressed when it comes to the life skill. Coping skills, why? Because we don't know how to deal with the low frustration tolerance, how to deal with the impulsivity, how to deal with the low self-esteem, how to deal with the conflict of losing the things. So, enhancing life skill means activities that enhance these skills can help people. They face new challenges such as economic stress or debt, divorce or losing the people, physical illness and aging. So I think this is a very, very important. For me, enhancing life skills of my clients matters a lot more than even prescribing medication. What works best for them to overcome a stressful situation? Resilience. That we call it language is ability to cope in the face. It is the ability to tackle challenges. Circumstances are, when you still can come out and big picture. We now know in kids and nurtured genetic factor, constitutional is something that can be developed. Is a related traits such as positive optimism to life skills. In addition to life skills, they are using the protective factors mentioned to build the resilience. Okay, so we must know what are the factors for suicide. Okay, what protective factors look like? Help children to make the experiencing a negative feeling, sad, angry, fearful, and calming activity to change them. I remember I always tell the parents, if your child is angry, please give them football. Let them kick. Okay. Forget to model use. You can say something like, mom is feeling frustrated right now, so I am going to take some deep breaths and pet the dog to feel better. See, look at how coping skill change, the crisis into, a lighter behavior. Self-esteem, work with your children, to boost their confidence. You can do this by encouraging them to leadership role at home or in the school, like asking them, why don't you help your friend, to do exam. So they develop that. If you speak positively about yourself, they are more for their positive aspect as well. Support and connectedness. Loneliness is a very important factor in suicide. So having others to run to in challenging times is important for coping under stress. It is said that people who have got a good network crisis probably will not think about suicide. They may feel hopeless, but still they would feel that there are people around me, who are there to support. So if your child has a few close relationships, try building their network through extracurricular or online activities, community, family interactions. School, children spend a lot of time during the school interacting with teachers, peers, staff, even when engaged in remote learning. School personnel can partner in improving outcome for your child academically, socially, and emotionally. Okay, this is a very, very important. Very few people understand that school is the best place to, make people academically, probably can emotionally strengthen. Mental health care is always important. Support from licensed professional can make a big difference. Child experience suicidal thinking. I, in fact, today had a child who was suicidal. Okay, and the child was small in the physique, a very, very intelligent child. But everybody used to tease this child, at the age of 16, you look so small, so much malnourished. So this child has developed depression. concern that how I'm going to face. So it took time today for us to convince that child, asking that what is the great thing which you have? Maybe if you have to tell people. And he say, so we asked how many people probably are, as intelligent as you are, even if they are tall. So the child understood that probably that his intelligence is important than his small stature. Limiting access to weapons, medical means is very important. Asking directly about thoughts of suicide and means for harm is the most effective way to determine the risk. Don't be afraid to ask your child, are you thinking about killing yourself? We did ask about Adivasi child and he said yes. In fact, he said he kept something, something like a kanji ahead with it. So unless and until we develop rapport and ask what is there in the mind, we probably won't be able to help them. What are the barriers? Recognizing that you need emotional support or professional help, not knowing how to cultural tradition that value individual independence or frown on seeking help outside the family. And this is very important. The mistaken belief that problems you are facing cannot be resolved even with assistance. Like कौन मदद कर सकता है? इसे तो मुझे भगवान भी नहीं मदद कर सकता. If that kind of attitude, it needs to be changed. Lack of access to care, of a lack providers, issues. So in such a situation, really need something at a policy level. Self-awareness in crisis management. Am I doing it? Recognize values and beliefs. In different cultural and worldviews, okay? Becoming personal self-regulation skills and being aware of your body responses. One patient always felt palpitation. He felt suicidal. Now this is very important. And I said, okay, if you don't feel, when you have that mind, when you feel palpitation, try going to your doctor. Try asking help. So some of how we identify is important. Then we'll start. Question to ask yourself during a crisis: what feelings am I experiencing in the moment? Am I scared? Am I nervous? Am I angry? Am I calm? What is the person in crisis experiencing? Are afraid or feeling disrespected? Because if they feel insulted, we really need to support them, because feeling insulted, generally is, and that's in terms of the suicide. This is the best way to respond in this situation. How do we help people? What example? I generally examples where people try to start in crisis, develop the emotional to effectively respond and manage crisis. This is very important. Emotion is a very important for us to work with the people suicidal. So issues are there. We have to work on esteem, work building control on impulsivity. So there are many which we really need to deal with. So I here, or maybe I can just talk about self-esteem. So don't have slide, but work on this. It's really a very important. Okay, so say to the degree to which we evaluate effectively, it represents or that is often with other. आपको किसी कंपेयर करते हैं, हमें कुछ लगता है कि हमें कुछ है नहीं. So then that our evaluation about starts getting haywire. We do write out the least things you admire. जो exercise के साथ की थी, 15 बरस का था, जो सुइसाइडल था। तो लोग क्या कहते हैं आपको, लोग कहते हैं कि आप से ऐसे दिखते हो, इंप्रेसिव नहीं हो, आप अगली दिखते। ये कहने के बावजूद भी है जो लोगों ने आपको एडमायर करना चाहिए। Important thing. It can be challenging to sit down and think about our admirable traits, even awkward. Even we feel awkward. But acknowledging your skills or things you like about yourself can improve your self-talk. तो ये बच्चा मुझे बोला कि मैं तो इंटेलिजेंट हूँ, मैंने अभी तक एग्जाम में बहुत अच्छा किया है, मेरी क्लास में किसी ने इतने अच्छे मार्क्स नहीं मिला है। मैंने बोला तो ये तो बहुत बड़ी चीज है, ये तो आपको भगवान की देन है कि आपका इंटेलिजेंस, आपकी बुद्धिमत्ता इतनी स्ट्रांग है। See, he had the power of conviction. तो मैंने से जो आम जनता को नहीं मिलती। और क्या है, आप कहते हो आप कभी लोगों के साथ, तो बोले कि मेरा इंटेलिजेंट है, बुद्धि पर अच्छा खेल लेता हो, और मैं मुझे बुद्धि पर में कॉलेज में हमारे जिले में अवार्ड्स मिल चुके हैं। मुझे लगता है कि ये इस तरह की बातें जब मन में आती है तो हमारा एक कॉन्फिडेंस है वो बढ़ जाता है, और ये बच्चे का बढ़ता जा रहा था। क्योंकि आज पहली बार ये बच्चा आया था, काफी सुइसाइडल था, और हम लोगों ने जिस तरह उनकी पॉजिटिविटी उनको कहने के बोली, तो वो काफी मन में स्ट्रांग होता जा रहा था। बाय द एंड ऑफ मोर देन an hour he was positive about himself, क्योंकि it is very important to tell him बॉडी इमेज तो नहीं बदलेगी, आप ऊंचे अचानक नहीं हो जाओगे, लेकिन इंटेलिजेंस के साथ कल आप बहुत कुछ कर सकोगे। ओके, सो दिस इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट। Don't just write down any positive affirmation you come across. Instead, look for relevant affirmation and consider how to accept yourself. मैं इंटेलिजेंट हूँ, मैं क्लास में, तो ये जो एक्सेप्टेंस है वो इजी है, इसमें कुछ बड़ी चीजें नहीं है। ओके, सो ये हमें सिखाना है। स्टॉप बीइंग अ पीपल प्लीजर। लोगों को इतना खुश करने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है। ओके, पीपल विद पुअर सेल्फ एस्टीम कैन फील ऑब्लिगेटेड टू से यस टू रिक्वेस्ट. They often put helping others before their own mental being easily overwhelmed, whether at work or. So it's nice to be helpful and supportive, but your self-esteem eventually suffers when you tie your self-worth to how much you do for others. करने में हमें अगर अच्छे हैं तो ये हम लोग पूरी दुनिया को खुश तो नहीं कर सकते, बार बार भी नहीं। So it's very important that we must look at ourselves, and be nice to people, but not at the cost of self-respect. ये बहुत important है। और जब self-respect, self-esteem strong होता है, oneself नहीं, step outside. self-esteem बढ़ाने के लिए हमें करनी होती है। हमें कठिनाइयों का सामना, हमें आह्वान पड़ते हैं, न्यू अपॉर्चुनिटी को देखना पड़ता है। We have to do succeed in any big or small way. We should that we have to do positive aspects. Okay, so this is very important. It doesn't mean how to throw yourself into highly uncomfortable situations. It means you are things difficult situation. So this is a one building up self-esteem. Stop comparing your progress and self-worth shouldn't be connected to how well other people are doing. Okay, I mean नहीं हो सकते, जितनी संपत्ति है नहीं हो सकती, मेरे पास इतनी संपत्ति दुखी रहूं यही जरूरी है। So there will always at something than you. That doesn't mean you are not good or good enough. Okay, तो मैं लता मंगेशकर तो नहीं हो सकती हूँ, लेकिन I am a very good psychiatrist and I know मैं डील करती हूँ मेरे तो पॉजिटिव है, क्योंकि I know what I am, knowledge I have capacity. Okay, Stop comparing yourself to others. But staying away from social media can help a lot. Okay, digital detoxification can help a lot. So appreciate your differences compared to others. But remember that you are not in competition with anyone else's progress in this world. My progress, my lookout, my commitment, So this is very important. And forgive yourself for your past thoughts. This is very important. मैंने क्या गलती की, कितनी गलत किया? हो सकता है हम लोग ह्यूमन बीइंग हैं, आखिर इंसान ही तो है हम, तो हम लोग मिस्टेक तो करेंगे, हमसे कोई ना कोई हर्ट हो जाता है, उसका मतलब ये नहीं हुआ कि हम अपने आप को पनिश करें. ओके, एज यू वर्क टू बिल्ड योर सेल्फ एस्टीम, you need to forgive yourself for how you treated yourself before. You can't move forward, with your progress without accepting that you used to judge yourself and others harsh. Hard habit, we have to but break it and don't be harsh yourself. अगर दुनिया में कोई एक इंसान अच्छा हो सकता है हमारे साथ, हम खुद, और जब हम खुद अच्छे होते हैं तो we don't hurting ourselves. So self-compassion and resilience is very important to build self-esteem, and this is a very, very important perspective. So protect yourself the way you can, and you're building a more solid foundation when you choose healthier relation with yourself. हमें की जरूरत नहीं है. I think I this is what say, Amrish.
Yeah.
I stop here.
Yeah, thank you, Shubha. I think some of the excellent points from an experienced suicidologist and about finer aspect of how to really build your mental strength, how to build resilience, improve frustration tolerance. And I think we are coming close to the program for today, the 4 days webinar. We will be having opportunity to listen and discuss with Dr. Parker in future. We have the next program arranged from 4th of September. As we know, I will repeat that we have committed to our group and ourselves that we will conduct this program for next 1 year, for every month in first week. We are discussing that whether to continue with the format of these 4 days or to make it more user-friendly or have a conference kind of a layout. We will write to you about it, whatever is decided, but the program will begin on 4th of September. And that is for the next month. And every month during the first week, we have this webinar touching upon different areas of student mental health, student suicide, peer pressure, mental illness, etc., etc. Now, before I hand over this to our President of Freedom from Poverty Trust, Dr. Dwivedi, for his closing remarks and note of thanks, I have to share only 2 things. One, when it comes to what should we do, I have 5 things to tell. So please take it with. Number 1, identify the risk factors in anybody's life. For example, there may be a student who is drinking alcohol. So he must ask, am I drinking alcohol? Can I stop it? Yes, one should. Can I not? If I'm compelled with social drinking behavior, must watch out whether you are crossing the limits and is it becoming alcohol-induced disorder? Can you confine yourself to socially responsible behavior of drinking? Because alcohol is #1 toxic risk factor. So suicide takes place when we do not take care about the factors which convert individuals' risk from low risk to high risk. So this pointer, the number of factors which contribute, these are known as risk factors. So try to find out individual risk factor. Second, find the cultural methods to minimize the risk potential. For example, if there are financial difficulties in the house, which is a risk factor and it is a risk potential, without wasting time. One must sit with the financial planner and sort the issue. To live with the problem of conflict is inviting trouble of suicide behavior. The third is try to find out what are your protective factors. How do you increase your protection net? How do you improve your social circle, social support? Can you please stop your mic? We will invite you to contribute after some time. And the last is what Dr. Parker was talking, how to improve your self-worth, how to develop the skills of self-development. I think we need to talk a lot more about these things, and we will. The last point is about the question which was asked, how do we find out that Mr. X or Mr. Y is developing a mental health issue? And I would very plainly say that it is a complex area, because it is not like our hand, our body, our pain. It is the person who perceives अपनी इंद्रियों में जब उनके फंक्शन में कोई खराबी महसूस होती है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, हमारे सोचने का तरीका, हमारी याददाश्त, हमारी भावनाएं, इम्पल्सिविटी, व्यवहार, आचार, विचार, काम करने की क्षमता, तनाव झेलने की क्षमता, ह्यूमन रिलेशन की तकलीफें, problems of interpersonal relationship, etc., etc. These are the symptoms of mental health issues. We are working on this very important issue, and we hope that we will be able to give some standard, reliable instrument to measure what is the level of stress, what is the level of whether somebody has a psychiatric problem or he doesn't have. There are a lot of programs available on internet. One can find out, but it is very cultural issue. What is normal in one culture may become abnormal in another culture. So these are sensitive issues. It is better for everyone to have authentic information about mental health. That is most important. Know about warning signs and symptoms of mental disorders. All these are available. If you do not have access, our website will provide all these information. That is www.mnasikshakri.org. So please keep an eye on this website. Now, at the end, may I invite Dr. Dwivedi to take over and conclude the program, the session, and extend the vote of thanks. Dr. Dwivedi, please.
My heartfelt gratitude and a huge thank you to all the people who donated freely of their time to come and enlighten us on this very difficult topic. Thank you to Dr. Srivastava for organizing this and his team at Mnasik Shakri. And a big thank you to all the participants who came to this and made this program a huge success. I think the key point here is this is a long-term problem. It's been existing for a long while. We are just starting this program, and your suggestions and comments are very welcome. Any way we can help save even one life is very much appreciated. It really is very much appreciated. And as president of the Freedom Poverty Foundation here in Canada and the Freedom Foundation Trust in Lucknow, again, my heartfelt gratitude and thank you to everyone, and especially to Dr. Srivastava for making this possible. And I would invite all of you to keep coming back next month to see what else we can be enlightened with. It's absolutely an amazing journey. I've learned a lot. I apologize for today. I've been in and out because I've been in the operating room taking care of patients. But again, a big thank you and very much appreciated.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Much appreciate all your support. Keep in touch और इस परिवार में जुड़े रहें. धन्यवाद.
Thank you.